Okay. Looks like we're on. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the study session on the River Renewal project. And Mr. Wood.
I don't have anything on this. I'll quickly kick it over to Martha Tasker. She's got a lot of information to get through, some pretty exciting stuff as we get kicking on the River Renewal. So go ahead, Martha.
Right. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Today we're going to talk about the River Renewal update. I'm not going to go back very far in time just to where we're at on the project currently, because I'd need a couple 3 hours if I went back to the beginning. So we're going to start where we are and go forwards. So I want to start out by introducing a few people that are here and have been working diligently on this project, some for years, some for months. I'm going to start out with city staff, and I want to introduce Jim Kowach. He's city engineer / interim director of public works, and he is very involved with streets and transportation, so he's valuable on this RAISE grant that's totally about transportation and 7 bridges. I want to introduce John Harvey, city surveyor, and he's been very busy working with all of the property owners, marking property pins in different locations along the 6.8 miles of river channel. So busy. Then I want to introduce Jane Anderson. I thought you left, Jane, but I looked there, I couldn't see you. Jane Anderson, she's the executive director for Friends of the River Foundation. For some of you, you may not realize, but Friends of the River has been very active on this project since pre-2007. They spent about $300,000 of their own money to find out if the community is really excited about the river and bringing it back to be a valuable amenity like it was in the beginning. Talked to over 3,000 community members and decided that it really was a valuable project to bring back. So they've been integrate in the group. They brought it to the City Commission in 2009. We prepared and authorized a master plan that was completed. It was approved in 2010. It was, the vote at that time was no, not this time. For the project, 2016, the voters passed the sales tax funding, which really brings us to where we're at today in the project that we're working on. So next I'll introduce HDR staff that's here. Eric Dove is the project manager for the project, and he's been working on the project since 2017. Troy Henningsen, he's the, I'll call him lead landscape architect. Will that work? And he's been on the project since 2017 also. And then we have Rob Kirkpatrick, and he is the lead real estate team leader. So he'll be talking to you a little bit later about the property along the project. So that's my brief introduction. And today we'll do a project overview, and I'll cover that briefly, and it's going to be pretty minimal. Then we'll move into the funded project overview, and Eric Dove will cover that. Aesthetics and design elements will be Troy Henningsen, and then we'll end up with real property acquisition and needs in the process. So, project overview. Basically, with this project, I mentioned getting to the 2016 vote. And basically, when we got to that point, we'd heard a little bit from the citizens that they felt the 2010 master plan was a little grandiose, and we'd put a lot of effort into water taxis and being able to provide that service on this project. And basically, when we got started, we decided we really needed to fine-tune our vision and make it be something that worked for the city of Salina. And in doing that, we did public and steering committee meetings. We had a steering committee idea, and I asked Eric how many people, and he said about 8. Well, we got applications, and we ended up with about 25 or 26, and every one of them was great, so we brought them all into the steering committee group. It was quite a large bunch to handle, but at the end of the day, They came from every aspect of the community and provided valuable information trying to right-size this project. And we had 4 public meetings, over 350 attended. The steering committee attended 11 2 3-hour meetings, 4 public surveys, and about 4,500 Facebook Live. So truly, this project was something that people in the community were interested in. We looked at the alternatives presented in the 2010 master plan, and our real goal was to try to right-size the project. And what we did was we started looking at, okay, what's different now? And we determined that we had the downtown redevelopment project, and that was really probably a catalyst of the idea that the river project would occur. So if you think about downtown, you see all of the development from the streetscape to the field house, the alley, Old Chicago, Barilla Grill, the garage, Homewood Suites. That's where the change had happened. Originally in 2010, we were looking at Tony's Pizza Event Center. So 7 years later, the idea was to let's focus in the downtown area and try to get the most bang for a buck in that area. So that's basically what we did. And when we got to that point, this is really what came out of the group, what was most important to the citizens at that time. They wanted increased quantity of water in the river. As you know now, when the flood control levee was built, 6.8 miles of the river was cut off from flow and filled with sediment. And they wanted to improve the quality of the water in the channel. The second was multi-use trails. And then they wanted to improve public and park area around the river and make it useful. They wanted the bridges to look a little better and have pedestrian amenities. And number 5 was canoes and kayaks. Spaces for public performance, and it goes on down the list. Number 10 was passenger taxis, so it didn't rate very high in the 2017 project. So that just focused on what we were to do as far as the public was concerned, and then you'll see as we go through our presentation where we're tracking along with those ideas. The project is funded by local sales tax. According to Ms. Pack, our finance director, we have about $17 million of sales tax money to spend. The second part of this project is a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers ecosystem restoration project. And that project is funded through a 65% federal, 35% local funds. We're underway on that on a feasibility study. And then the main part of our project for the aesthetics and to make all of those beaches functional is a U.S. Department of Raise grant. And I'm not going to talk a lot about those because that's what the rest of the group is going to talk about as we move forward. Some of these slides you've seen a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that everyone understands this project gets constructed between 2026 and 2030. So initially when we started the project, everyone asked me, did you include inflation? Well, we added about $5 million to our first estimate for the project to cover inflation, which brings us our total project to about $39 million for the RAISE grant. And then just to be fair, we need to look at both projects together to see how it marries up with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project, and that's what this slide here does. I can't point to numbers because the pointer doesn't shine on there, so hopefully I can make sense to you. But basically, the total of these projects as they stand, the RAISE grant and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project is about $60 million. But on top of that, there's some additional work for the RAISE grant and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project from the feasibility and design that dollars have already spent, 4th Street Plaza, property acquisition, and some grant documents. And then on the core project, there's feasibility dollars that's been spent prior to this, and then the water rights that we want to purchase from Canopolis Lake and some more feasibility. But at the end of the day, all of the projects together are roughly $69 million. And this is just the last kind of the portion of this where, and we've talked about this in City Commission before, is that our funding would fall short from where we initially started. That as far as the city, we need to end up with roughly $29 million, which we looked at as a process to come up from the general fund, utility fund, and other funds to make up that shortage. And then the other dollars are roughly $40 million, so we're back to our $60 million project, but we're about 42 cents on the dollar for the project. It's a large project and it's a lot of money, but at the end of the day, we're leveraging a lot of other people's money. And then as far as schedule, the raise grant construction is to start in June of 2026 and be completed in November of 2030, December. And then we finish up our paperwork in September. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers schedule is on the bottom. There's a couple of years for feasibility, a couple of years for design, a couple of years for construction, but at the end of the day, we all get done about 2030, assuming the Corps project receives the funding that it needs to over time. Always got to add that caveat. In discussion with the Corps, they're very interested in the project and believe that they're on track, so until they tell me differently, I have to tell that story. So next, I'm going to pass this over to Eric Dove, and we're going to start talking about the good stuff. There you go.
Boy, I get to do the good stuff.
Yes, or at least I think it is.
Good afternoon. It's so great to be back and talk with you. And anytime we have status meetings is a good thing. That means we have action. We're moving forward. We were blessed really to win this RAISE grant. A lot of people, a lot of effort, a huge number of community support for it. And so with this RAISE grant now, we can really move very quickly through our design phase and go into construction. Martha showed the overall schedule. We have 60% finishing up. We have 90% of our bid documents ready in December of this year. We then go through several rounds of review at the federal level, and we will open bids in June of 26. So we're moving. There's a lot of work to do. When we did the master plan, there were so many good elements, but the costs greatly exceeded what we could raise locally. So we broke the project into several phases. And so with this RAISE grant, I'm calling this phase 1. And so I want to walk through what is in phase 1, what you get with this first round. And that way we want to make sure we're communicating effectively on what elements are in this plan. So up in the top right, at the flood control levee, we're adding a new culvert underneath the federal levee. What that's intended to do is let the water out faster. When we build all these improvements, we want to make sure to let the water out quicker than what we can today to improve that flood conveyance down at the downstream end. So that is part of this project. Moving upstream into Lakewood Lake, we'll have canoe and kayak launches, which are ADA accessible, and Troy will cover some of those elements, what that looks like. We're going to start in on our trails and pedestrian bridges to take us over the old Smoky Hill Channel. And so we'll let water into and out of the lake underneath these pedestrian bridges, and in Lakewood is our first bridge. We're doing a pedestrian safety improvement on North Ohio. There will be a box culvert that allow mostly students to go under Ohio rather than at grade cross, much safer. And then that culvert, in a major flood, we'd also let water go through there. So it's a multi-purpose flood improvement project, as well as mostly a pedestrian safety. The trail system will continue all the way around through Riverside Park to a canoe and kayak launch. The RAISE grant essentially is a transportation grant, so if you think about it, we're paying for bridges, trails, and then the canoe and kayaks are also part of the transportation elements. And so you'll be able to go from Riverside to Lakewood Lake once the Corps finishes their effort, and we'll have that infrastructure in and ready to go. Elm, ash, iron, all are small culverts that you wouldn't be able to get through. We're going to replace those with bridges. At Iron, we're adding the Art Deco elements, and what Art Deco is or isn't, I'll let Troy cover that. I'm an engineer. And then we're also doing Complete Street at 4th Street. So what that is right at Iron, we'll be able to close that street for special events. And we'll be able to occupy that entire street for that event. And so we're putting up the infrastructure for that and making that viable. The trail system will connect all the way down. We do take a shortcut past the community theater as we head south down Front Street, and we go through Iron. We then go into Walnut Street and into Oakdale Park. We'll have a new boat storage facility. We want to make sure that when you need to, you can access the river for maintenance, and also if you have a fast water rescue that's needed. And so that facility will be in Oakdale. It's an excellent place for it. It'll serve as a multifunction building for the parks as well. So that building will get a lot of use. The trail system will continue on around. We do have an infrastructure renewal with a retaining wall. It's right at the water treatment plant. The city receives their chemicals right in front of there. And if you look at the wall, there's holes in it. It's not good shape. So we included that on this grant. So we'll be able to get that wall rebuilt using mostly federal dollars. The system will continue to come around with a trail system. Midway, we get a new bridge, and we start setting up a really nice entrance into Tony's at that location. And then the trail system continues on around using a combination of existing pavement and then ties into the YMCA driveway. Hopefully you've seen the wonderful trail that the city built there with a lot of grant funding and in cooperation between YMCA and Friends of the River. That system we're going to tie right into. There will be a new bridge at YMCA with a dedicated pedestrian crossing and go into a flashing beacon so kids will be able to go from YMCA over to the aquatic center with the flashing beacon, so we'll stop traffic. And then the trail will continue on down through South Ohio. At South Ohio, that'll be a twin box culvert. One box carries water, one box will carry people under the road. So just like on North Ohio, taking people under is a very huge safety issue. There's a bus stop, and right now you have to sprint across 5 lanes of traffic without a signal. And so we'll get them across that, and then the trail system continues on through Billboard Park. When we're all said and done, we'll be able to loop all the way from the levee, all the way around the trail system, and then all the way back to the levee. So pretty dramatic change with all the new infrastructure, with the bridges, all the new trail systems, interconnecting what's already there, and then getting the canoe and kayak systems in. So it's probably the toughest phase is what we're looking at here. And being able to win that grant and put this in with all the new infrastructure, I can't say enough. Only 17% of those applications were approved, and really shows the dedication. Senator Moran, hugely valuable in securing that. So there's a couple more details, but I covered it pretty well. And if you have questions on the engineering elements, yeah, please ask. And then I'll let Troy cover
I had a question. You talked about blocking off, was it Iron Street? And how would traffic be diverted? Would that both east and west lanes would be?
Yeah, good question. So Iron Street will remain open. 4th Street, right now 4th Street is between the Car Museum and the river.
Right.
And it has the tracks going down it. So we'd close off 4th Street, but Iron would remain open.
Okay, Iron. Okay, I misunderstood.
Yeah.
I thought,
Yeah.
okay, that's
Temporary.
Yeah, just for special events.
right, but just, okay.
Troy has some awesome graphics to show how we could do that.
So the Iron Street Bridge, from all appearances, looks like a really nice bridge.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually a culvert under there. Will that whole bridge, that whole thing come out?
Yes. Yep. It'll go right back to a natural channel. There's part of the funding that we're receiving is going to be from the Corps of Engineers, and that's for ecosystem enhancement. So if we can bring this back to a natural channel, that enables them to be a cost partner with us. When we asked the community what they preferred, natural channel came back overwhelmingly. And initially, we weren't thinking canoe and kayak access, but it was the community that really said, that's what we want, that's what we desire. So then those small culverts would create a drowning hazard. So the culverts are coming out, better bridges are going in.
It'll be an entirely new structure.
Yes.
What about Ohio Street with the underpasses? Will the whole construction picture I'm struggling with, will Ohio Street remain open during this?
Yeah, I can have Jim talk about that. But yes, right now the plan is we're going to close 3 lanes. We're going to build that 3-lane section while we have 2 lanes open. So 1 north, 1 south. And then we'll flip it over. So we'll have those 2 lanes now open and close 2 lanes.
So that section you're working on, that'll come out and that'll all be,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah. From street level, you won't notice a lot of changes. It's a remove and put back. And we're designing it to be a very quick process to minimize the amount of traffic disruption. So we're using standard precast box culverts that can be quickly installed and resume traffic as quickly as we can.
The street as it is now will come out and be replaced.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Good questions. Thank you. Any others? All right, Troy.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to try to add some more detail to Eric's overview that he gave on some of the features that we looked at. So we did this aesthetics design process where in the previous effort we had 20-some folks on the committee. Here we had a smaller group to kind of help advance some of those ideas that they came up with at that time. So you can see with the bullets here, here's the items that we looked at for aesthetic enhancements. So those included the bridges, what kind of materials will we use there? Will there be patterns on those? Paving in the hardscape materials, so we're looking at things like bricks or pavers, colored concrete, textured concrete. Then the retaining walls. So we have several different levels of the retaining walls depending on the height. They'll have different materials for that. Lighting was a big issue. I know people love the color changing lights downtown, as well as some of the other kind of neat lighting ideas that we can accomplish here. Looking at the site furnishings, so benches, trash cans, all those features, as well as any canopy structures or fencing that's required. So we wanted everything to kind of tie together and have a similar look. Like you see downtown there, everything's kind of black and metal and it all ties together visually. We looked at some ideas for signage and wayfinding features, especially along the pathway, help direct people to some of the key points of interest along the way there. Then landscaping was another item we looked at, basically just the use of native plant materials that don't require a whole lot of extra maintenance or irrigation needs. And then how we can kind of improve upon the public art program, which is a great aspect you have here downtown. How can we tie into some of those great features? So those are the items we kind of looked at for making some of these improvements. To do that, we split the area into basically 3 themes. And we thought or 3 districts. And we thought within each of these districts, they'd have the similar features. So we broke it off into Lakewood Park. So it's more of a naturalistic area. And we wanted to use some imagery of maybe native plants and water, features like that. And then we get into what we call the neighborhood and city parks. So that's where a lot of the residential is throughout the corridor we're looking at. And plus many of the city parks, Kenwood Park, Oakdale Park, Riverside Park, and Bill Burke Park as well. So all those we kind of lump together and say, okay, things within this district should also look similar. And then there's the downtown category there. So that's close to Santa Fe Avenue there. And some of the features we did there with the Art Deco type of look, we thought we could pull some of those features into that district. So looking at that as a whole, then we took it to the next level. Okay, what's already here in town? go to the next slide here. We looked at a lot of the local precedents, right? We looked at some of the cues from the existing buildings there, some of the various features that are already around town. Here's some of those details here we looked at. There's a lot of Art Deco, as you all know, in the downtown and the district surrounding that. But there's also some great features in the existing parks, some old stonework with the WPA style that they did back in the 1930s or so. So we tried to tie into some of these features as well. Here's some additional images, the downtown overhead pedestrian crossings, some of the murals and the artwork that's gone on in the last few years with the Arts and Humanities department here. So that brings us to the first category we're going to talk about today, and that's going to be the bridges. So I'm going to walk through the next slide here. Maybe. There we go. So each of those orange areas is what we're calling a new bridge location. So those are in Lakewood Park. There's a main vehicular bridge there, as well as there'd be two pedestrian bridges. There'd be one crossing the existing Smoky Hill River, and then there'd be another one. We're going to connect the river to Lakewood Lake at one point, so there'd be another bridge crossing that new connection. So connecting the lake to the river, right now they're at different elevations. So once we connect those, the lake and the river will then be connected at that same water elevation. So it'd be one pedestrian bridge over that future channel. Number two there would be the Elm Street Bridge. So again, right now it's just a culvert, so we're opening that up, making it more of a traditional bridge appearance. The Ash Street one is similar to that. You mentioned the Iron Avenue one, and we'll show pictures of these here in a second, but just kind of going over the details and where those are located. The next big one would be the Midway there, so realigning the current entrance drive from Ohio, having a tighter curve than what's there now. And YMCA Drive, it's a shorter span, but as Eric mentioned, that's a key connection for those kids to cross over into the Kenwood Cove area. And then the last one, we're calling it a bridge, but it's essentially twin box culverts that are side by side. And I'm going to go into detail of each of these. So Lakewood Park, this is kind of what that will look like. So the features used here are more that nature-centric theme. So we have some bridge or metal panels on the top of the bridge there that have a native grass pattern on them to help kind of reinforce the naturalistic area. And then some of the materials used are, the natural stone type of look. So that's the Lakewood Park area. Next will be the Elm Street, pedestrian bridges. So talking about the pedestrian bridges, they're both in the Lakewood Park area along the existing trail system there. But those will be more of a pre-manufactured structure, truss system that will be just manufactured off-site and then just dropped into place on the base that we put in there. So that'll be within the trail system that would be going in this first phase. All right, here is the Elm one. So Elm, Ash, and Iron Avenue we all have in that downtown themed district. So in that district we want to utilize some of these Art Deco elements. And to do that here we have, you probably can't see it very well, but on those columns on the top of the bridge, we use a similar pattern to what you see downtown with that chevron shape of the two different colors of brick. Between those brick columns would be some fencing, pedestrian fencing, and then within that fencing would have the Art Deco pattern. Here's the one here with kind of the circles or the circle pattern there. Ash Street is similar to Elm, except it does have a different pattern there between those columns. And that would be just another Art Deco pattern. And then Iron Avenue we kind of see is the gem of all 7 of the bridges. It's the one we think will have the most people going by it or gathering by it. So we wanted to spend a lot of time to get some of these features right. So there's a lot of brickwork there, using a similar pattern to what you see in the downtown pedestrian crossing patterns there. And then we'll have some similar to what we see now on the existing bridge, where much of that is concrete columns. So we're trying to incorporate some of the concrete elements that are there currently. And you can see the shape of those kind of ties into those downtown corner monuments that are on each of the intersections. Similar look and feel to those to help just reinforce that connection to downtown, because this is right at 4th and Iron there. It's the closest point to downtown is Santa Fe Avenue along this entire corridor. So making that connection there seemed like a logical step. Underneath Iron Avenue, on one side of the river will be a boardwalk that will have a future connection to the north, but right now the boardwalk will go between Iron Avenue down to about 3rd Street along the river. So it'll be right there at the river's edge. In the future, there will be the bicycle trail or the multi-use trail will go underneath the bridge on the other side of the river, but that'll be a future phase now. But that's what those two openings are underneath the bridge there. This will have some metal panels attached to the face of those columns that'll be backlit and have some, not quite as fancy as the downtown pedestrian structures, but it'll have some of those types of features. All right, the next one would be the Midway. So this is in the Parks and Neighborhood District is what we're calling that. And so here we thought we'd tie in some of the elements we see in Oakdale Park with the stone work on a lot of those old structures, those old picnic tables and other items like that. So using a similar stone to that is what we thought we could work into that. The Midway will also have a future trail connection underneath it. We're leaving space for that under this phase, but that's not going in this particular phase due to the funding issues. So we're leaving the space for it now, but that'll be a future connection, as you see there in the image. And then YMCA is the next one, also in the Parks and Neighborhood District. Here we're using on the wing walls a textured concrete type of look that kind of invokes some ripples or patterns that try to tie it into the water there. You've got the Kenwood Cove across the street there, the water park the kids are going to, as well as the river itself. Just kind of, you can see the wavy pattern on the top. That would be the form liner in the concrete that would take that shape. Okay, so South Ohio is the twin box culverts that Eric mentioned earlier. So here's kind of what that would look like. So you see the one box for the pedestrians on the left side there, and then the box just adjacent to that would be for the main water at the normal elevation that would travel through that. The retaining wall you see on the right, that leads up to the Kawasaki dealer that's there now. So that'd be right at the edge of their property there with some of the protective fencing on the top there to prevent people from falling down. You can see the landscaping here adjacent to the trail is more of a naturalistic on-mode concept there. So using a lot of the native grasses and wildflowers to, not provide a whole lot of, mowing. We're not out here mowing every week, but it does provide some of that, biodiversity for animals and bees and butterflies. The next item I'm going to talk about is the 4th Street Plaza. So that is the area, back up here, this area Eric mentioned there, right at 4th and Iron at the red circled area there. So you can see some of the existing photos along that corridor now. It does have the Union Pacific rail line that goes, down the middle of the street for a portion of it, but then it does go to the side and then cross the road to the other side by the time you get to the intersection there at Iron. The old gas station right at the corner, north of the car museum currently. Then you can see just one photos with the train going right down the middle there. So that's the location, but this is the concept of bringing this into a shared street. So a shared street or a complete street in this location, we're looking at a curbless environment. So there's no traditional curbs there. We're separating the vehicular versus the pedestrian or bicycle movements through the use of other obstacles here. So we got benches, we got landscaping, we have permanent lighted bollards in some locations. We have the limestone benching that you see in one of those downtown pocket parks along Santa Fe Avenue, and the light poles. So all these items just help prevent people from driving across that line, as well as the use of materials. So even though we have a standard 24-foot roadway through there, we're using the use of materials to visually narrow that. So on the outside, there will be exposed aggregate 2-foot bands on either side, as well as in the center of those. So instead of having a traditional 12-foot lane that they appear as a 9-foot lane, which also causes the traffic to slow down through there, which is the idea, making this a space for everybody. And you can see it at the crossing there. This is on the south portion. There's a pedestrian crossing, which I don't know if you can see, but it's number 6 there on the far bottom right of the image there. That'll be the main crossing from east to west. It's basically aligned right in front of the entrance to the car museum. So that would go across the street to the east, and then the area that's ghosted in there will be a future project where we anticipate putting some playgrounds and some other features over there, a water feature, as well as a pavilion and things. So those are a separate project, not part of this current funding, but it will tie together seamlessly once it's all said and done there. So this is a view from Iron Avenue, looking to the south. So there's 3 bollards kind of right in the middle of the roadway. Those would be removable bollards that when there are events taking place there, you can put those in and essentially block off the street to traffic, and then set up a stage for a concert or whatever, or if there's booths or tents lined up in the street, that's preventing cars from accessing it. So there's 3 of them here on the north side as well as on the south side, just on the south side of that pedestrian crossing I showed on the previous page. It's hard to see here, but so the funding for this project covered the street itself as well as the boardwalk down at the bottom of the channel there by the water, but it didn't cover the access down there with steps and a ramp. So that'll be part of that future project I alluded to in the previous slide there. That access down to the boardwalk will be covered under a separate funding source. All right, the next item is the canoe and kayak launches. So as we saw from some of the ranking that happened in the earlier phase, that was one of the items the public felt pretty strongly about accessing the river. I mean, at one time, this river was, had a lot of boats in it. People would fish on there, and just kind of, it's been a forgotten amenity now. So bringing access back to the river and getting people out and on it again is be an important item here. So we identified 4 locations for canoe and kayak launches. Eric mentioned the one in Lakewood Lake there. That is the one that's designated to be ADA accessible. So we'll have ramping down to the lake level, and then I'll show you some slides here in a second here that kind of highlight how we get them onto the kayaks there. The next one is the Riverside Park. After that would be the Oakdale Park. Eric mentioned the maintenance, the boat storage facility. That facility has a boat ramp just for its boats. It's not open to the public, but it'll be closed off to the public. But that's where they will access the river with their maintenance boats, or if they do need to do a rescue on the river there. Adjacent to that boat ramp will be another canoe kayak launch. So it'll have some steps, railing to bring down the canoes and kayaks. And then the last location for a canoe kayak launch is just on the east side of the current YMCA parking lot there. So those are the 4 locations identified for those features, and these are what some of those could look like. The 2 middle photos are what that ADA accessible canoe kayak launch looks like. So it's floating on the lake itself. It's got a bench where folks in a wheelchair can sit on that and slide into the canoe or kayak and not worry about it tipping over, while they're trying to get in there. So it's a pre-manufactured structure that just floats right onto the water there and has access to the shore and the sidewalk system on the shore. The other locations at Riverside and the YMCA would be similar to what you see here, or there'd be some sort of a railing system that you could place your canoe or kayak on to help you bring it down the slope, where you're not just dragging it behind you. Just kind of makes it a little easier. It's right there at your waist level instead of dragging your arms down by the ground here. But these are just some other photos of similar concepts. They're made with wood rails, as you see on the left there, or metal rails you see on the right there. So all these things will have a set of steps that kind of lead down to the water level. Lighting was another big opportunity for us. Yeah, I mentioned the downtown lights there and the color changing elements. But there's other features that we can include. I mentioned the lighted bollards. So the top left photo there is what the lighted bollards along the 4th Street would look like. There's other opportunities for overhead kind of catenary lighting, where you have either the bulbs or one large structure kind of dangling between a wire. One of the pocket parks downtown has some of the string lighting like that. Other opportunities are just accent lighting for retaining walls or some of the bridge structures, just not for safety lighting, but it's just accenting some of these features. With a lot of these textures we're putting on the bridges, the lighting and the textures add a little different shadows depending on where the light's shining there. So it adds some little movement elements to those bridges. And then uplighting landscaping can also highlight some features there, as well as you see downtown there's those benches that have the lighting built right into them. So features similar to that are what we're looking at. The main 3 lights we're looking at here is the 3 images on the right. So along the pathway, it'll have that structure there that has a little bit of an arm on it, so it can be installed at the edge of the trail and kind of overhang just a little bit the trail to shine the light there. The bridge light in the top right will also be what we see on the boardwalk down below. And all these would be black in color. I know these are shown as gray, but that's just it's the way they came in the website there. But these features, or these lights, are similar to what we see downtown now. It just doesn't have the kind of that top cap on it that has the pointed on it. Other than that, it's a similar fixture from the same manufacturer. And then the bottom photo there is more of the roadway lighting, but that's installed in locations we need some extra lighting around the intersections to provide that safety lighting. So those are the 3 main structures we'll be using throughout the improvements here. All right, site furnishings. I talked about earlier how we wanted all these features to tie together, similar look, similar feel. So again, going with that black metal concept there. The first one I'm going to talk about is the benches. So in the top left there, you see, it's going to be hard to see on the screen here or in your packets there, but there's 3 different bench looks there, and the backs have interchangeable backs where depending on which of those themed districts you're located in, it would have a different back. So all the benches within each individual district will look the same, but although it's the same bench, it'll have a different back when you move into the next district. So the downtown one will have more of that Art Deco patterns, whereas the Lakewood Park benches would have that grassy symbol there. We're also utilizing some of those. This is from one of the plazas downtown there, the limestone blocks. So those are going to be utilized in some locations as well. And you can see the trash receptacle there chosen, the bicycle racks there on the bottom left, as well as the removable bollards above that. So the removable bollards are just a simple pole there, a cylindrical pole that can be taken in and out. And then the fencing on the right-hand side there will go along the retaining walls, as well as some of the other safety areas required. The 2 canopies in the middle, I alluded to those in that 4th Street area as being a future project, but this is kind of the look and feel that the aesthetics folks help us hone in on here as far as the structure there. We talked about other opportunities, maybe some of the fabric sales and things like that, but they wanted more of a solid look. And the last item I'm going to talk about here is the multimodal hub. So the multimodal hub is located where the Midway Bridge comes in from Ohio towards the Tony's Pizza Event Center. As part of this grant that we received, it's about improving transportation. So that's not just cars, it's all different modes of transportation. So in this multimodal hub, there's going to be parking spaces for electrical vehicles to plug in. It's going to have a bus stop, some carpooling spaces designated for those folks, or rideshare spaces as well. Parking for the trailhead. The trail comes right through that area, so it's an easy way to hop on and off, take your bike off the back of your car. And also a potential opportunity for adding a bike sharing station like there are several other locations around town here. So just one concept on what that could look like. So this would be looking from the Midway Bridge area, looking towards the north, on the future trail coming in there. Potential area or potential items we could have there are bike repair stations. So that's just a little workbench, has a lot of the tools you need to change a tire or, tighten your handlebars and things like that. Potential opportunity for some wayfinding signage to go there, bike racks, seating areas, drinking fountains, just all sorts of different opportunities there. If you really squint, you can see the bus in the background there parked at the bus stop. But this would be an area, there'd be a small parking lot there for some of those spaces like I talked about earlier, for those electric vehicles and carpool, et cetera. So this would be the existing loop road that's currently there will be, I don't know how far it's moving, maybe 120 feet or so from the existing area. But in the gap between is where this would be located. Oh, I guess I did have one more. So the trails, yeah. Trails were one of the highest desires by the public here, and it's one of the most visible features that kind of connects the whole project together. So on this first phase here, including the existing trails that are already in place, the YMCA as well as up by the middle school, connecting to those existing pieces and including those existing pieces will be about 6.3 miles from Bill Burke Park all the way up to where it connects with the levee on the far north there on the east side of Lakewood Lake. So 6.3 miles to connect from levee to levee, and then you can take the existing levee trail and connect back. And so it's just one big loop instead of having these dead-end segments that are there now. Now, it's not all the same configuration everywhere. It's not, whereas the YMCA is this nice 10-foot paved trail. Some of it will still be like that, but others are going to use existing roadways where you have the Sharo symbols of a shared roadway with automobiles. And then another version of that would be a side path. This is mainly on the Front Street, South Front Street area, where it'd be adjacent to that roadway, right at the edge of the road there. But it's widening the existing sidewalk that's there currently. So, and the combination of those different configurations is what's made up here. So on the maps here, the solid green lines are what's existing currently. You see the big piece there. This is on the north half that we're looking at now. So this is in front of the Lakewood Middle School. There's a nice piece already there. So we'll be connecting into that. Just starting at the levee as well. That big green line there on the east side is the levee trail. So connecting through that along the river. Eric talked about the two pedestrian bridges there just on the east side of Lakewood Lake. That's where those would be located. And then once we get to the parking lot of Lakewood Park there, we're using the existing pavement that's there now, going across the new bridge that's going to be put in. And then once we get to the other side of that new bridge, we would go off trail again. That would be a new 10-foot wide concrete trail there until it connects to the Lakewood Middle School trail. From there, it crosses on the existing pedestrian bridge that's on the south side of the middle school. And then from that point, it would go down underneath Ohio in the box culvert there on the north end. Coming back up the other side, it's along the edge of the Riverside Drive there, goes through Riverside Park, crosses at grade at Elm Street, and it kind of goes behind some of the houses there between Ash and Elm. Once it gets to Ash Street, it's going to cross at grade again, and then that's where it kind of picks up as the side path next to Front Street, where it would be from Ash to Iron. It'll be on the east side of the road. It'll use those existing crossings at Iron that already have the flashing symbols there. And then on the south side of Iron Avenue, it flips to the west side of the road, and then it'll go down all the way to Walnut Street there. At Walnut Street, we have to reconfigure some of the existing bridge walls that are there to help make that crossing of Walnut Street. When the Corps of Engineers project comes in place, that Walnut Street Bridge goes away. So it's kind of a temporary condition here until that bridge is removed. And then once we're south of Walnut Street, it's mainly off-street until we get to the Mulberry crossing. So this is within Oakdale Park. Then once we're in Oakdale Park, it uses some of the existing roadways there. It goes behind the amphitheater area. There's a little cul-de-sac there. So that's all on existing pavement with the painted Sharrow markings. Once we get to that cul-de-sac area, then it'll go off street again, cross the existing pedestrian bridge that goes over to Kenwood Park. And then once we get to the intersection there by Tony's Event Center, we'll cross at grade there. There'll be some sort of a pedestrian improvements feature there, whether it's a traffic island or a flashing beacon or a raised speed table there, help slow down cars. There'll be a crossing of the roadway there. That's one of the changes from the master plan where we previously were going underneath Oakdale Drive there, but the cost of the retaining walls there caused us to look for other solutions to try to save some money on the project. So that was one of those cost savings, was crossing at grade there. Then that's where kind of a mixture of being on and off street here as we're going through that multimodal area, multimodal hub area as the Midway Bridge comes into play there. And we're using a lot of the existing loop road within Kenwood Park until we get to the area just on the north side of the river there by the YMCA where the current Master Gardeners demonstration gardens are. The idea is for those Master Gardeners to move over closer to where the Midway Bridge is going in. So it'll go through the Master Gardeners area there, cross on the new YMCA Bridge, be a big retaining wall there right at the YMCA Bridge. Then it will tie into the newly constructed YMCA trail at that location. And then there's the different colored green dots there will be a future connection that aren't part of this project, but the city has funding, and Friends of the River is helping with that as well, making that connection. Our project picks up again there just on the west side of Ohio Street where we have those box culverts going underneath Ohio. And then from there it follows the alignment. There's a dirt trail there currently. We'll pave that dirt trail pretty much in the same location and elevation that currently is at now. And then it ties into the existing system there over by Billburg Park. So essentially that's how we get those 6.3 miles of new loop. So I'll take any questions here, or otherwise we'll hand it over to Rob here for the real estate.
I got a few.
Yeah.
Eric talked about the existing trail behind the YMCA, which is 10 feet wide.
Yep.
I'm kind of thinking of the dollars and the price of concrete. Are all these trails going to be concrete?
That's the idea right now. Yep. It's concrete.
And 10 feet wide?
10 feet wide.
Well, we do have some limited areas where we did take it down to 8.
Oh, yeah. On the front street, that'll be 8 feet. Right. Thank you. So between Elm Street and essentially Walnut will be an 8-foot trail, just because we're working within existing right-of-ways. We're just trying to take a 4 or 5 foot sidewalk and trying to expand that to 8 feet. But then by going to 8 feet, then you affect some of the driveway approaches where, some of those might get too steep. So we couldn't go the full 10 on those areas. But yeah, besides the front street section, yeah, it is concrete. And
Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk through ADA accessibility and federal standards for shared use paths.
yeah, the minimum is 8 feet that they require. We're following the AASHTO bicycle facilities guidelines. They do allow 8 feet in limited locations, but they prefer 12 feet, but we can't accommodate that here in most locations. So 10 feet was kind of our target, but yeah, as far as the surface, concrete was the
Well, I think I'd be happy with 6 feet.
yeah.
So the challenge is if we go less than 8, we lose. Sorry. So the challenge is if we go less than 8, we lose federal funding. So instead of only paying roughly 40%, now you're paying 100%. So
Of course.
10 feet wide is cheaper than 6 feet. But also we're using concrete, and the reason is concrete costs less to maintain. If we went with like asphalt, we can meet our ADA standards with asphalt, but now the maintenance flips over to the city. So we would try to put in the most durable, what's going to last the longest, and have the least amount of maintenance through the cost match, and try not to leave that with a lower cost day one. Now, we are doing value engineering options. Troy mentioned one of them, running down Front Street to try to save cost. We've also narrowed some of the bridges. Like YMCA, we dropped sidewalks on both sides, and we just put a nice walkway on the south side, which ties in with the city's sidewalk project. So everywhere we can, we're trying to do value engineering to cut down the costs, because my gosh, construction costs have gone up. They've gone up so fast that we're trying to be very proactive to reduce that construction cost, so we're not surprised the day of bid opening.
That's
So-
why I think I'd
Yeah,
be happy with 5 or 6 feet wide.
I totally understand.
On the funding, federal funding, I guess all of us worry about this raise grant funding. Is that money in the bank? Is it still floating around?
I wish I had a crystal ball. I will say overall, I haven't seen infrastructure cuts. If you look at the programs that have been cut, generally they're not directly related to infrastructure. They might have more of a stronger DEI component, and we're not seeing that as of yet. But
Okay.
knock on wood.
It's hard to guess.
I got a list here, so. You mentioned down on 4th Street, are you aware of the current expansion plans at the garage?
Yeah, we have seen some of those preliminary plans.
Okay.
It was in your PowerPoint, the expansion. I better answer this one. Yes, we're familiar with the garage. In fact, we had DRT last Wednesday and went through their plan of what they're doing. We talked to them about, or I talked to them about the raise grant and what's going on, to think about drainage, because that area doesn't drain as well as we'd like to. So we're having those conversations. The garage staff was there, and Charles Rands was also there, so
Good.
we're both communicating. I don't know that we've solved all the problems that we might see right there, but we're talking.
They just received a $100,000 grant to get going on that project, so.
Yes. And so when that slide came up, I had asked them, can we use that? And they said, oh, we've improved it, but from what our rendering is, but yes, we're working with them.
Thank you.
Okay, and you said the Walnut Bridge will be removed eventually, Walnut Street?
Yes. The current configuration at Walnut is just giant girders underneath. And with that in place, it doesn't allow any headroom to be able to canoe and kayak underneath that. Just because I think they use a transportation girder that's extra thick. So it's like 7 feet thick versus a standard one now. So the idea was when the channel improvements happen below, that bridge would come out.
That bridge will go away. And that's one of my concerns is our existing bridges. I'm thinking of our pedestrian bridges in Oakdale Park. When you start putting in all these new bridges that look really nice, those are gonna start looking really dated.
Yeah, the one existing bridge that we were planning on utilizing there, during the master plan, we envisioned a new bridge crossing between Kenwood and Oakdale Park. But just due to funding, we just said, let's cut that out of this phase and use the existing one that's there is narrower than we would like, narrower width to cross with, but we're utilizing it just and hopefully temporarily until it goes to a future phase.
Yeah, I think the one from 4th Street to Oakdale is one I'm thinking of it's a wooden bridge that's been there forever.
Yeah. Yeah, the new pedestrian bridges will have a concrete base on it to, crossing surface but yeah, as the old wood ones there, yeah, definitely, they'll look different than the new ones. Yeah.
And the hub, that'll just be one hub there at the Midway.
Yep, I think it's parking lot of maybe 20 spaces there with a bus stop adjacent to the new loop road that'll be going in as part of this project.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Is the plan to have the trails lit up
at
Yes,
night?
yes. So that lighting, the light pole there that had the little small overhanging arm would be the one that would go along the trail there at night. Yes, the idea is to be lit at night.
Will that power come from existing street lights and utilities, or
Yeah, I mean, I just
haven't thought that
not
far
exactly
ahead?
sure about the circuiting of those, but yeah, it won't be solar lights, I guess. Yeah, what I'm getting at, they'll be hardwired.
We're working with Evergy on that, where they want the electrical drops to be, but that will be on a separate controlled circuit, so we can turn it off if we so choose. There are also going to be LED lights, and so they'll have a much lower power draw. And there'll also be dark sky component, so when you look at it above, it doesn't add to light pollution of the evening.
Thank you, Eric.
Not really a question, but more of an observation. The lines are just so clean. I mean, architecturally speaking, and what I like is there's variety architecturally, but there's a cohesive feel and look to all of it. And again, I'm a fan of just how clean everything is. And it's not unnecessarily complicated, it's just elegant. And I mean, it's just, obviously I'm excited about the project, but seeing the renderings today, even more so.
Well, that's a testament to the aesthetics folks that helped us out. They wanted everything kind of be in the same family, for the bridges I'm talking here, everything be in the same family, but have its own distinct style depending on which neighborhood or where it's at along the corridor. But similar features and components, but just little variation on the materials used.
It's well thought out.
Thank you. Any others?
The raise grant, I thought that had been approved. Has that not been completely approved and for funding?
Yes, we have it approved as soon as we finish the design. Then we have to have the property acquired for the project, which we're going to talk about later today. But yes, the full amount has been assigned to us. Right now, we're sending in invoices for the engineering up until they paid the share that's theirs.
Okay, I got a little nervous when the way that question was answered. So even though we've not received the funds are there to be used for, and the raise grant will allow us to do the 7 bridges.
Yes.
All the trails.
The trails that were identified, if we did all 6.8 miles, there's a lot of trails behind the community theater and Burger King. So in some cases, when you talk about off-road, that's the new trails, but some trails are existing streets and that type of thing. That's where we were trying to get to, because I think Commissioner Longbine referenced those are a little bit on the pricey side. So in our original grant, we had to try to decide what will allow us to get the grant and fit into the project. Our whole project, I think, if we had a budget for it, would be over $100 million. Right. So a lot of hard decisions was made about what goes in, but you will be able to walk or ride your bicycle the entire 6.3 miles, and it'll be marked. Some won't be a new trail. I just want to make sure it's not solid concrete.
Will there be lighting and within that, those dollars coming from the raise grant? Does that include the lighting and,
yes,
again, we were talking about the funding for getting electricity to all that. That's part of our...
Yes, those estimates were in our original budgets.
So that leads me...
I studied.
So that leads me to my next question when I'm looking over the budget is, so we've been approved there. What is our timeline for the Corps approving our request?
That one's not as cut and dry and etched in stone because we don't have an agreement yet with them. We're doing a feasibility study. Once that feasibility study is completed, then it'll work it up through the chain of command with the Corps and get approved, and then funding will come our way. They believe they have the funding to complete the design. And the construction, we will need some other allotment of dollars to do the construction. And that's still to be asked for and approved.
Part of my concern with the with the core money is there's been significant change with in Washington, D.C. as to how dollars are being given out. And so I guess my question is, one comment that was made is that Ms. Pack made the comment that we have 17 million. Are we done collecting sales tax? Is it 17 million? So we currently have 17 million. Is that correct, or that's our goal?
That's our goal when at the end of the time frame, when
Okay.
that phases out. Some years, I think Debbie has indicated we've done a little better than that, but we don't know what we're going to do.
When does that phase out also?
Is that 20? Oh, there's
The
Debbie.
sales tax collection goes through 2036, and that's, as you recall, the replacement of the Kenwood Cove debt was
Right.
dedicated to this project at $1.3 million a year through 2036.
Okay. So that leads me to when I look at our total funding, I guess if the core did not come through, we would have new bridges, new trails, and that's kind of where we'd be, and then have to decide if there was anything else going to be done by the city, correct? And the 17 million could be used just for bridges and trails to fill that gap.
Early on, HDR and city staff looked at options to do a project without the core funding. And that would be more of to get the flowing through the channel. I'm going to pick my words here. There's a process to go through working with the core, and a lot of steps and a lot of time. And all those steps and time take dollars. So at some point, if they tell us they can't get the funding, the value of the core to me is they do all the NEPA and the permitting. If it's a core project, then they're going to permit that work. So that has a cost that is in their project would cost us additional dollars. So, but we did try to say, what if?
I'm just trying to, in my own mind, work through this with or without core money, and what kind of impact that can have on the taxpayer. If I know we're collecting the 17, so that's all been anticipated. We've already decided that next year, because of what we've done, we're going to set $5 million aside because of potential overruns and so on and so forth. But my concern is where we're at after that, and how we stop at a point if we can't, if we have to.
Well, that was really my goal with trying to present both projects to you from what we knew, because that's the best we know. And I can tell you that that's a concern that each and every one on this side also have, not knowing how grants and the economy is going to work out. But
because I guess if you get the trails in, you get the bridges in, and let's say the core doesn't come through, there's always that potential to go back in the future, I guess, and look for funding to help with that, I guess.
And we do have about, I can't remember, I think we're 7.5 million or 6.5 city share. And so the goal with that would be to cut I'll call it, I think Eric uses the word pilot channel, but we do a channel to move the water, and then we'd have to look at the sediment, which we've made that a fairly simple structure now. So getting the bids in for the RAISE grant is really step one in knowing where we really at. So
I'm just trying to calculate how we do this without getting out over the front of our skis, to say, and getting
Right.
ourselves into some kind of a problem.
So we'd get the bridges and all of that done there.
And then by then we should have an idea where the core is, and we'll move forward from there.
That's the idea, and
Okay.
that's a little more iffier than I'd like to be, and I'm sure you all feel the
Well,
same
it's been
way.
iffy for quite a few years, and
Yes.
the longer it goes, the more
Yeah, it does. So
I get nervous.
getting the bid done for the RAISE grant and knowing exactly where we stand, because with the RAISE grant, as you remember, we're required to build that full project.
Right.
And so we've tried to factor in inflation and other things into that project. And I think Troy mentioned value engineering. Every step of the way, we're looking at what's the width of the bridge, what's the width of the sidewalk on each side, trying to look for cost-saving features, but till we get that bid, we'll know a lot more after that. And then we do have a plan for a pilot channel that we could cut without the core, but which is a lot less than the cost of the entire core project. So we do have some ideas, but
Okay.
step 1, 2, 3 is really a challenge here in today's world. Does that help, Commissioner?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
I feel a little better knowing that we'll do phase 1 and not required to do phase 2, and we'll just have to address those as they come up.
In the core project, I mean, we do have money. I mean, we are setting aside money to do the core project. That's not 100% federal funds. So what we would do is just take the money we were going to share with the core and do our own project that would be much scaled back. I mean, I think that's been the idea
that's
kind of all along.
It is.
And would the core funding be all or none? We don't know.
At the speed they work, I'm not able to answer exactly when we'll know exactly where we stand with them. But in all of our conversations to date, their feasibility study, they feel like they can do the design, but when they get to the construction, then they'll really have to go back, and we'll need Senator Moran to help us with an earmark for a project if that's the way it works. So they all are positive. That's all I can say. They seem to be positive, but money in the bank's a different story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wished I had a better answer for you, but
Thank
one
you.
step at a time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Really good questions, and thank you for thinking of that. 'Cause,
Yeah, we'd hate to put on all these nice new improvements and there's just a channel that still looks neglected. All right, anything else for me, or we'll hand it over to Rob here to talk about the properties?
So Martha and Eric and Troy talked to you about the financial and the engineering and the aesthetic elements of this project, and there's a lot of really cool stuff there. But I get to talk to you about the people side of this. And so you have to acquire this in order to do this project and all those wonderful things that we just saw in all those slides. The city needs to acquire real property rights from individual landowners. So the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution basically says that a government entity can't take property, it can't obtain property without just compensation. So in 1970, Congress passed the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Policies Act. I had to Google it to see what the long name was. Everybody just calls it the Uniform Act in my business. But it basically outlines the process by which you obtain property. So it's administered by the Federal Highway Administration. It flows down from there to the Kansas Department of Transportation, which ultimately oversees local public agencies like the City of Salina. So for this, you can see we've got a map there essentially that outlines where we're looking to acquire property. It's a mix of property acquisitions and some temporary construction easements. And there is some city-owned properties there as well. So mostly, again, we're looking at a lot of city-owned and undevelopable ground, a lot of people's backyards. So we've got this slide here, and this kind of walks through the land acquisition process. So we're kind of at the point where the rubber meets the road, right? So it starts with the right-of-way plans that Eric and his engineering team have provided that tell us these are the rights that we need to obtain. From that, then we obtain title reports on each property. We send out notices to each individual landowner, and then go through an appraisal process, right? So there's valuation process. Now, if we just got confirmation today, there was an update to the Uniform Act in 2024. One of those updates changed the threshold. So if a property now is expected to be worth the rights to be acquired less than $15,000, you can go through what's called an appraisal waiver valuation. Whereas if it's over $15,000, it would go through a full appraisal, goes through an appraisal review. So there's again notification process there that happens. Licensed appraisers determine a valuation, right? And then with the approval of the city, we create an offer and then we start negotiations. So our expectation is we're going to start this process in May. We're hoping that to have most of our negotiations completed by November of 2025. Also in there is an opportunity if individual landowners want to donate these real estate rights, they certainly can do that. We do have to provide them with that valuation as well. There's a possibility, again, not a tax professional, but they can talk to their tax professional about if that's deductible. Once we have acceptance from all landowners, then we would move to right-of-way certification. Obviously, if we cannot get voluntary acceptance, there's a mediation process that occurs. But the hope is that we would be able to submit right-of-way certification with the city to Kansas DOT by May of 2026. And that allows you then to certify the project and move forward with construction. Then this last slide, if it's going to work for me. There we go. Okay, so at our open house, let's see. Don't leave me in charge of technology. At our open house, again, we'll have a project overview station where Martha will talk about the schedule and costs. Jim and Troy will be at the Trail Road and Bridge project station. John, Eric, and myself will be at the real estate station. So, and that's all the slides I have. I hope you're not disappointed. But any questions for me?
Any questions for Mr. Kirkpatrick? I think we're set. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Would someone like to announce the details of this open house?
Yes, the public open house will be May 13th at the Tony's Pizza Event Center in the Great Plains area, their conference area. And the doors will open at 5:15. There will be presentation, very similar to what you all seen today, from 5:30 to 6:30, and then at 6:30 we'll go into these open sessions as Robert described there, for the public to come to whichever area they want to and comment on things, ask questions. And there will also be a comment form that they could fill out if they have thoughts or questions, something they want to ask that they can turn in, or a QR code that they can go onto our website and fill it out electronically. But assume it will probably wrap up at about 7:30-ish tomorrow night, May 13th. Did I hit all the, would it get you there, that information?
I believe so.
Yeah, and we have sent that out a few times. We've done some TV announcements trying to get everyone there. So the more the merrier as far as I'm concerned. I'd like to see as many people there as possible.
Thank you. If that's it, we'll close the study session and we'll resume at normal meeting time, 4 p.m. Thank you. All right, everybody, welcome to the Salina City Commission meeting for May 12th, 2025. We'll call this to order, and I will check with staff, see if this confirmation for Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been properly provided.
Yes.
Thank you. On to roll call.
Mayor Lankowitz.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Hoppick.
Here.
Commissioner Ivy.
Here.
Commissioner Longbine.
Here.
All those are able, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Public hearings today, so on to the consent agenda.
Item 4.1, consider approval of the minutes of the meeting of April 28th, 2025. Item 4.2, consider approval of resolution number 25-8292, certifying the notice of intent to request release of community development block grant funds and authorizing the mayor to approve submittal of the required environmental review for the project. Item 4.3, consider approval of resolution number 25-8291, authorizing staff to apply for the 2025 Emergency Solutions Grant. Item 4.4, consider authorizing the interim city manager to sign a request from the Kansas Department of Transportation to exchange 2025 federal funds. And item 4.5, consider awarding the bid for the sand volleyball courts at Jerry Ivy Memorial Park to Garabay Siteworks LLC of Salina, Kansas, in an amount not to exceed $94,174.50.
Thank you. Is there any item on the consent agenda any commissioner would like to have removed?
I would just like to emphasize that we are fulfilling the commitment to restoring the sand volleyball court at Jerry Ivy Park.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on any of the items on the consent agenda? I'll bring it back to the commission.
Mayor Lankowitz, I move we approve consent agenda items 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, and item 4.5.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as read, 4.1 through 4.5. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. On to administration and
All right. Item 5.1, consider approval of resolution number 25-8293, authorizing the offering for public sale of 2025 general obligation bonds, and consider authorizing the interim city manager to execute an agreement with Stiefel Nicolaus & Company, Inc. to provide financial advisor services for the issuance of said bonds.
Good afternoon, Mayors and Commissioners. Debbie Pack, Director of Finance. This is kind of the final step for these projects. It's the permanent financing of these projects. And the way we get to this point is staff reviews which projects are either have been completed or are near completion and ready for their final funding. In addition to that, staff, in addition to reviewing the projects, our financial advisor, Stiefel Nicolaus, also reviews our outstanding bonds to determine if there's any that are eligible for refinancing. And upon that review, they did not find any current bonds that would be eligible, that would make financial sense to rebond or to refinance at this time. So those are not included in this financing. Resolution 258293 authorizes us to offer for public sale our general obligation bonds. It also provides for us to be able to prepare our sale materials, which includes our official statements, which basically give bond purchasers the story about us and our projects. The bonds for this particular issuance are going to cover 3 projects. Landfill cell number 21 at a little over $3.5 million would be financed for 5 years. The Schneider Building Upgrades project is going to be financed about $7.5 million over 20 years. And Stone Lake Phase 3C, which is a special assessment project for $1.6 million over 20 years. Debt payments are supported by multiple sources of revenue, taxes, special assessments, or revenue from enterprise funds, which would be wastewater and water, solid waste, or sanitation. As far as the tax-supported funds, these are supported not only from current property tax, but they're also supported by delinquent tax payments, motor vehicle tax payments, sales tax, and transient guest tax. The way we figure that out for each year, annually during the budget system, we determine what the total debt payments are going to be. We estimate what we believe the revenue will be for all of those other sources, and what's left over for general obligation bonds is the need that we have from property tax. Currently, our tax mill levy rate is 7.31. And in the analysis that we've done for this particular issuance and for the issuance that we have in our 10-year or a 5-year capital plan, we do not believe that we'll have to change that mill levy rate to cover the debt service payments for these bonds. In addition to the authorization to sell the bonds, Stifel Nicholas is required to sign a financial advisory services agreement with the city every time that they do services for us to issue bonds. And so that's the second action item on the agenda for today. We did include that in this proposal, a copy of that for you to read. The cost of issuance, which would be their services and any other services, get added to the bond issuance. So today we have two actions. It's the approval of resolution number 258293, which authorizes us to sell our general obligation bonds publicly. And the second is to authorize the interim city manager to sign the financial advisory services agreement with Stifel Nicholas and Company. And I also have Stifel Nicholas is on Zoom if you have any questions about that particular item or about the bond issuance in general. And I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Pack. Any questions?
I do have a comment that just jogged my memory. I was going to ask staff if we could at some point have an update from the Snyder Electric project.
Yeah, we sure can. Actually, we plan to do that probably sometime next month. We're starting to get to the very end of that, so I've been working with them to have that done probably sometime at the end of June.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item? And I will bring it back to the commission.
Mayor, I move we approve resolution number 25-8293, authorizing the offering for public sale of general obligation bonds.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of resolution number 25-8293, authorizing the offering for public sale of general obligation bonds. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0.
Okay, Mayor Linkowitz, before we move to item 5.2 and 5.3, I'm going to recuse myself.
We've got one more.
Oh, that's
item
right.
here.
Got to do it. My fault.
Oh.
I'll move to authorize the city manager to sign the financial advisory services agreement with Stifel Nicholas and Company.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize the city manager to sign the financial advisory service agreement with Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0.
Okay, now I will recuse myself
All
from
right.
items 5.2 and 5.3.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Item 5.2, consider authorizing the interim city manager to execute an agreement with HDR Engineering, Inc. for real property acquisition services relating to the Smoky Hill River Renewal project.
Ms. Tasker.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Martha Tasker, Director of Utilities. The city is responsible for acquiring all the necessary real property and permanent and temporary easements for construction of the Smoky Hill River Renewal Phase 1 construction project. And that would be in compliance with the federal relocation and acquisition requirements. HDR Engineering Incorporated is in the process of completing the final design for the project. Therefore, they're very familiar with the property acquisition requirements for the project due to the construction limits for all of the design features. And they have staff that specializes in completing property acquisitions for federally funded projects, which we are due to the RAISE grant. The real property acquisition process will be conducted in compliance with the Federal Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Policy Act, which is much easier to say Uniform Act. The attached agreement anticipates a total of 36 fee acquisitions. An allowance for an additional 4 acquisitions have been budgeted for a total of 40. The schedule for the property acquisition is from May of 2025 through April of 2026. This allows us to complete that work and be certified through KDOT and the Federal Highway Commission that we've completed it, and allows us to have a bid letting in June of 2026. The basis of payment for the agreement is written on an amount not to exceed of $200,340. 2 companion pieces that go along with this work is title work and appraisals. The City of Salina purchasing policy will be utilized for the appraisals and title work because they fall under the $50,000 limit for the city manager. Real estate appraisal services will provide the appraisals. Mid-Kansas Title Company Incorporated and Land Title Services will provide the title work. These 3 companies have provided services for the City of Salina on federal funded projects in the past. The appraisal will assist in determination of the amount to be paid as just compensation for the property. A total of the 9 appraisals are included in the scope of work. And in addition, there's a sales analysis to be completed for the waiver valuations. And we've been trying to get our arms around, is that $10,000 or $15,000? And since we put out this staff report in the agreement, we've now confirmed through KDOT that it's official, it's $15,000, and it's included in their manual now. But we didn't get that until just the last day or so. So it took a bit to get there, but it's $15,000 for valuation waivers. The estimated cost for the appraisals is $43,000. The title companies will provide a title binder, closing, and title insurance in compliance with the city's requirement. At this time, we're looking at a total of 42 parcels, and they are split between 22 parcels to each of the 2 title companies. And the estimated cost for the title work is $22,000 for each title company. We've talked about the schedule. We're in design with the bid letting in June of 2026. Substantial completion open to traffic November 1st of 2030. And to have all of the budget period and all of our paperwork in for the monies from the federal grants is June 30th of 2031. And those are dates that are in our agreement with the U.S. Department of Transportation. The River Renewal project includes $600,000 for acquisition of property. So I just wanted to summarize this for you because I try to show you all the costs I know, so we are keeping track of them. And the total for real property acquisition, the appraisals, and the title work previously described above is $287,340 out of the $600,000 that we have budgeted. And once we have the appraisals done and the market value analysis, we'll come back and give you an aggregated acquisition budget for all of that work to be done, and then that would require your action at that time. Just a little early to be able to give you that budget number. We've identified some standard options. Option 1 is to approve a motion authorizing the interim city manager to execute an agreement with HDR Engineering Incorporated for the Smoky Hill River Renewal Phase 1 construction project, real property acquisition in an amount not to exceed $200,340. Second would be approve a motion to execute the agreement with HDR with any amendments the City Commission deems appropriate. And third would be do not proceed with the agreement. And at that time, we'd have to determine how move forward differently. So staff recommends option 1. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have, and HDR staff and John Harvey and Jim are all here, so I think out of that group we could hopefully answer your questions if you have some.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any additional questions for Ms. Taster?
What's the kind of the breakdown on the type of property? A lot of private property, or I know the map in the presentation earlier showed there was a lot of city-owned property, but
There is.
is it like portions of people's yards, something like that?
John,
or-
you want to take that because you've been intricate with the map. That's why I asked John to stay. He's been working on the map. I think I can guess it, but he can be accurate.
Yeah, good afternoon. There's a variety of different spots where we'll be putting the improvements. So some of them are backyards, there'll be some front yards, there'll be some property that'll be where the existing river channel is, where nobody's doing anything in that area now. It's kind of like wooded areas where the river's where it's overgrown. So just a variety of different private properties that we're looking at. Yeah.
Is it like just a rough percentage-wise, private versus public? Is it a lot, or?
We're right now what we're talking about is the private property acquisition. So the trail will go through all of the public land, all of the city-owned land. We won't need to acquire anything through those areas, but through the private areas we will. That's owned by somebody else. We'll need to acquire ownership to make it into public ownership.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
So 2 commercial.
Yeah. Should I talk about that?
Yeah, you could cover that.
It's not, Martha helped me, reminded me, there are commercial lots as well where we'll be taking, we'll be needing property in not just residential areas, but there'll be some areas where there'll be commercial properties also. So portions of properties, front yards, stuff like that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Probably to add to that, from the beginning of the project, we've been in a position that over 50% of the property is publicly owned. And this piece is, with it being the bridges, is a lot in the case of right-of-way for the bridges. We do have some work with some temporary easements and permanent easements on some of the other properties, but for the most part, if you're talking overall, we were about 50% city-owned property, and here we're probably maybe over that percentage since the bridges are in the right-of-way, and a lot of the trail work is in the parks. So, but there are some residential and a couple commercial properties, but they would add up to those. For the appraisals, we're looking at a total of 9 that we feel would be above the $15,000 limit, and I think we're doing title work on 44 pieces of property. So maybe that gives you a little bit of a clue on those, and those would be any permanent easements for access and so on. The city would be working on that part of it. Does that help?
Yeah.
Commissioner Ivey? Okay.
Thank you for the clarity on that.
I'd just comment, those who just turned on to the regular meeting, we discussed this heard an update for an hour and 45 minutes prior to this meeting, so if anyone would like to know more about it, go back and watch it.
All right. Any member of the public wish to comment on this item?
Ben Winholt, Salina. If you go back to your breakdown of property acquisition, on the way it happens, you go from negotiations and obligations to acceptance to right-of-way certification. If not, it goes to mediation. What happens is what I want to know is you skipped over that part. What happens if there's no result from the mediation as far as to the property owners and to the city? If we go into a lawsuit, we've already seen where this takes us.
Do you have anything on that?
I think I can take a shot at it. And Greg, if I get out of order, Mr. Bingson will help me here. The process, if we get to that point, we've tried to allow at least 6 months for that mediation process, which could be condemnation or that type of process to work through it. And that's where the Uniform Act would come into play for the value of that property. And if we get into that process, then there's 3 appraisers that would have to take a look at the property we're talking about and come to an agreement on what the actual value of that property is. Is that a good enough summary, Greg, or would you like to add more?
Well, if I may, the only thing I would add, the reference to a lawsuit, it is understandably a little bit confusing because the eminent domain process under Kansas law is actually a form of appraisal, and that's really what it comes down to. The court supervises that process, so it understandably kind of looks like a lawsuit when it's actually an administrative process that the court is responsible for overseeing. And as Ms. Tasker mentioned, the court has 2 determinations to make, and the primary one is whether the property is being acquired for a lawful public purpose. And if the court makes that determination, the second thing it does is appoint 3 appraisers. And then there is an administrative process where those appraisers hear evidence. It's not the formal rules of evidence that would apply on 3rd floor. It's a more relaxed evidentiary standard. But they hear input as to the valuation of those properties, and then they make their collective single determination of the value of the property that's being acquired. So that completes the process, and as soon as that process occurs where the valuation is made, the city or whomever is acquiring the title is then able to pay the award into the court, and upon doing so, takes title to the property. Now, if either party, either the party acquiring it, the property, or anyone with an ownership interest disagrees with that panel of appraisers, they then can appeal that, which is an evidentiary matter heard by the district court in terms of a full evidentiary trial, and only as to the issue of value. So there are 2 parts. That first is, again, simply an administrative process to determine the value under the supervision of the court. If either party disagrees, then they do have the right to appeal that determination to a trial by the district court.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, any other member of the public wish to comment on this item? We'll bring it back to the commission.
I move we approve authorizing the intern city manager to execute an agreement with HDR Engineering for Smoky Hill River Renewal Phase 1 construction project, real property acquisition in the amount not to exceed $200,340.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, authorizing the interim city manager to execute an agreement with HDR Engineering Incorporated for Smoky Hill River Renewal Phase 1 construction project, real property acquisition in an amount not to exceed $200,340. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Passes 4-0. On to 5.3.
Item 5.3, consider approval of Resolution 25-8295, reallocating the apportionment of the costs of improvement to Cedar Ridge Drive.
Mayor and Commissioners, Jacob Wood, Interim City Manager. This is kind of a unique request that we've had. I'll tell you, just in the way of background, Cedar Ridge Development came to the city in 2021 requesting to use special assessment finances to do the internal infrastructure on their development, as well as infrastructure that would be a perimeter street that connected to their development. And if you can see the map here that I have on the screen, this is the Cedar Ridge Development. And the portion of street or perimeter street that we're going to be talking about goes from about right here to right here. It's 435 feet of perimeter street, which would be Cedar Ridge Drive. So at the time when this development district was created, the developers did decide to allocate 100% of the cost of that perimeter street, that 435 feet, to the special assessment district that only included property that they owned. Over time, there's been a couple of things that have, I guess it's a series of unfortunate events, I think, in this development, which has caused the developers, it's caused a long delay in the street getting done, and then it's caused the developers to come back to the city and say, hey, we think that because of the delay in this project getting done, as well as there are areas outside of the district that actually will benefit from this street being upgraded, they've requested the city take on 100% of the cost of the upgrades to Cedar Ridge Drive. So the question that they're asking today is whether the city is interested in taking on some of those additional costs. And I'll tell you about the unfortunate events that I mentioned. So when this was originally approved, Cedar Ridge Drive, the portion that was going to go towards Cedar Ridge development is just this small portion. But the city at large has decided to do a project to pick up the rest of this. And as you can recall, last year that was shut down for about a month. When the contractor got into that work, there was a utility line that needed to be relocated. I'll tell you the process for how we do that. Before we do a project, we send out a notification to all the utilities and we say, hey, if you have lines in the area, we need to know about it. At the time, one utility did have a line in the area that they said, hey, we'll need to move that. They did move it, but we found one additional utility, which was an AT&T line. Once the contractor got into it, they found a line that needed to be removed or moved so that we could move that project forward. In that process, it took them probably 6 or 7 months to get that line relocated, and it got to the end of the construction season and really caused a delay, pushing the entire project into 2025. It should have been completed sometime in the summer of 2024, but here we are, and the project is still not complete. I will say the Cedar Ridge Drive portion is nearly complete. It should be complete in the next couple of weeks. With that, I will say there is some precedent for city to pick up a portion at large of a development for a perimeter street. Many of the upgrades that happen to Marymount as you go up and around the curve on Cedar Ridge and go north, many of those upgrades, we did do development districts where we did require some of those properties to pay a portion, but the city picked up 65% of that. And if you will look at the map here, Cedar Ridge development, there is a development to the south along Valley View Road where there's about 17 lots that directly benefit from the upgrade to that portion of Cedar Ridge Road that were not included in the special assessment district. They could have been included in the special assessment district on the front end, but at the time, once you have a developed lot, it's pretty difficult to get property owners to sign on to doing additional special assessments. So at the time, the developers did not include them in the special assessment district. That property, if you were to include that in the special assessment district, would be about 70% of the total property. So there is at least some precedent for the city picking up a perimeter street portion for a portion of a development that would have already been developed and been difficult to bring into a special assessment district. So really, the choices for the City Commission today, you could decide you want to fund this thing fully, fund the full upgrade to the road. You could take no action, which would cause special assessment financing to go on the lots as it was approved in 2023, or you could approve a portion of that, which if you were going to do just a portion, that 70% is a number that makes sense based on the benefit in that area. Kevin and Stephanie Kuhl are here if you'd like to hear them speak about their request to move this forward, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions. We've also got some other folks in the room who've been involved with this process who might be able to answer questions if you have any.
All right, thank you.
The separate project at the corner of Markley and Cedar Ridge, is that 100% city funded?
It is. It is. Mm-hmm. And if you go back to the map, I'll show you. So that was, there was no, when that portion of the street came into the city, so Briargate here and some of the development to the south, they were not required to upgrade that street when they came into the city because at the time, this portion of the street was a higher quality street than the rest of Cedar Ridge Drive. So had it been a lower quality or had they been required, and also there's been some changes to the perimeter street policy in that time frame as well. So the city did decide to upgrade this, and that is a city at large, 100% city at large project. There really isn't a mechanism because those other properties are already developed. We would have to go back and try and do a new special assessment district on top of them. But at the time, the city accepted that street and didn't expect that there would be any additional, any special assessment financing districts.
All right. Would the applicant like to come to the podium and?
We'll do that. No.
What?
No, let the applicant go
All right.
first. Okay.
I figure we'll do all the questions afterwards, if that's okay.
Hello, Stephanie Kuhl.
Kevin Kuhl.
Thank you for giving us an opportunity to be here today. As Jacob said, this really is a series of unfortunate events. We have, from the get-go, tried to be a good partner with the city in terms of development. When we committed to coming on as developers and being builders, we were committed to doing things a little bit differently and making sure that we were putting out a good, high-quality product. And we have done that thus far, and we will continue to do that thus far. It is not our intention to it's unfortunate that this happened. You guys were all given a very detailed timeline back in February in the letter that I wrote to you, kind of outlining exactly everything that has happened. And then again today in our detailed request for kind of what has happened. It's very unfortunate when you look at, just the economic impact alone to really what the city could have realized in terms of property taxes, sales tax, wages, just income to the city. You're looking at well over $3.5 million. And I base that number just off of the number of lot inquiries that we had in the last 60 days prior to me writing that letter, okay? We have lost an entire construction season. So when you go into development, you create, this is not we buy a house, we flip it, and we get our return on investment in, 60, 90 days. This is a long-term commitment. And you are basing your revenue and your potential revenue and income streams on things happening as they should. We had absolutely no reason to expect that the Cedar Point project would go any differently than things did with Cedar Ridge Phase 2. We had a wonderful experience with the city being in charge of the project and the infrastructure going in. There was absolutely nothing that went wrong. Cedar Point is an entirely different story. Again, everything is outlined. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for the Kuhls?
Yeah, at any point was construction actually prevented when the Markley end of the road was closed off?
So until just this past spring in March were the wedges put in place so that you could actually access the property. We had we had one couple that purchased 2 lots last I believe they closed in June of 2024, but we knew that they were not going to build for 2 years. Okay, they have a goal in mind. The city did not get the wedge in place until just like 6 or 8 weeks ago. Okay, if you drove by there, I know some of you did. There was probably an 8-inch or more gap between the road and getting in there. It was a very dangerous situation to have any kind of concrete trucks or things of that. So no, there has not been any construction happening.
Could the trucks have come from the other direction?
No. The whole, both entrances, so Cedar Point Place and Cedar Point Court, were not accessible because of the wedges not being placed in.
So that
You couldn't physically drive in there because they had 8 inches of concrete and then gravel out there where they were working on the street. So you couldn't physically drive in to this cul-de-sac.
So that area, I know that little layer, it's not showing up on this, at least I can't, I'm just
Well,
trying.
it's at the top. I mean, you can see the orange there.
Right. But the other end that ends up going to Marymount, that part of the road was accessible the whole time.
So what they're saying is, so there is a difference in elevation here, and because the road was built to the right elevation going in to Cedar Point, that they couldn't access from Cedar Ridge Drive to Cedar Point because there was a 6-inch or 8-inch drop.
Correct.
Until a wedge was put in, which didn't happen until.
So how were the people on Valley View getting to their homes?
Well, you could get to Valley View because Valley View has the same elevation as Cedar Ridge current.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I guess.
So this was always
I have
you could
pictures.
always travel on Cedar Ridge Drive, except for when it was closed down for that short period.
Correct.
It is the access from Cedar Ridge Drive onto Cedar Point that is at question.
So going north.
Correct.
Okay.
So when they put the curb and gutter in there, they poured the curb around the corner to attach it later on, and the pavement ended. And then it was just an 8-inch drop to the road bed, the base that they put down there to pour the concrete on. So there was no way to actually physically drive up onto the street to turn into our neighborhood. Across the street, it was fine because they hadn't done any demolition yet, so they could still turn into Valley View without any problem.
Okay. I guess I can see a reason for requesting this as far as, the prevention of your ability to access the street. I'm not as sold on the idea about the road being of greater benefit to more than just your area, because the other houses were there before you started developing. So, I mean, you would have known that those people were going to develop a benefit from the road, because that's just shifting their potential contribution into the benefit district onto the city. I mean, any road that gets built is going to benefit anybody who builds beyond that road. So it's.
There are more people than just there are more people than just the people that purchased the 22 lots that are benefiting from the improvements at Cedar Ridge Drive. Everybody that lives over in Grand Prairie and Mariposa and River Run and Valley View and Briargate and even back behind even further, and everybody that's going to the Great Life benefits from the improvements to Cedar Ridge Drive,
But that was known before you.
You are correct. You are correct.
So none of that has changed.
It has changed in the fact that when we were originally purchased this, that we were told that the costs were going to be $35,000 to repair the road, to bring it up to the standards. So that is part of it as well. But I think the larger point here is that the city, unfortunately, made some decisions in their management of this process that should never happen to anyone.
I understand that part, but I would not want to set the precedent of saying, well, since this area has developed more than what we thought it would, we should retroactively now say all these people should have benefited, because you had the opportunity to get all those people in the benefit district when you started this, but you chose not to because you thought it might be difficult to get them to agree.
What we haven't had the benefit of is being able to build houses in our lot because we can't get
Right, that
people
I understand
in
that.
there.
Yeah, I think that's separate from using as your second argument because it's going to benefit a greater number of people, because that was always the case.
I hear you.
I mean, because those houses were already there, so obviously those people were going to benefit from
Sure.
it. And then that related to the first issue of the AT&T line, who bears the ultimate responsibility for not knowing that line is there? AT&T for not reporting it, or for us not knowing? And I think I'd asked you before separately if utilities come back and tell us exactly where they put something, and response was, well, it's in the right of way, but not.
And anytime we do a project like this, we do contact the utilities and say, hey, we want to make sure that you don't have lines that are going to be impacted. So, and I don't think in this circumstance that a line was actually severed. I don't think we would have been responsible for that if we had severed one of their lines. I think they found it before anything actually happened, but they're responsible for moving it once we find it. So it's their responsibility to tell us about it, and any cost that would be incurred is on them. So
if we find a line that, because we did give them ample opportunity to let us know that there was a line there, and if they're saying no, there's no line when there really is, do they then bear the responsibility for delays, or part of the responsibility?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure I have an answer to that.
Or maybe it's going to just end up being a rhetorical question today, but I don't. I mean, because we don't necessarily know where every utility line in town is.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, and utility companies have a pretty broad authority within the right of way. I mean, they have to get permits from us. They have to, tell us what they're doing, but they have pretty broad authority to use the right of way. I mean, that's why we couldn't tell them. I mean, we don't have the ability to say, hey, AT&T, you need to be out there tomorrow and get this thing fixed. We are kind of beholden to their timelines. So I don't know if I'm answering your question at all, but
yeah, I guess I just assumed somewhat naively that we knew where every
I'm not sure that there's
utility
any
line in town is.
I'm not sure there's any recourse for us to say, hey, you delayed this project, we can come back on you in some way. That might be a.
Well, I think a pretty good argument can be made that a lot of people use Cedar Ridge Drive. I'm one of them. I would use it every day from Markley to Marymount and Crawford until it was closed off. And I'm going to ask a question, and if it's something you don't want to divulge, but I think it would maybe lend some clarity. Obviously, when you have a development like this, you have some financing involved, and there's accruing interest, and you are roughly a year behind schedule. Would you mind, or do you know, like how much in accrued interest this has cost you?
I don't have an exact figure, but I can tell you what it would have potentially have been in lost revenue. If you take the average price of those lots, the lowest price lots are $43,000. If we just sold all 7 of those lots, that's almost $300,000 that we would have had in lost revenue.
Okay, thank you. And I mean,
we've been very good financial managers in terms of our loans, where I'd rather not say how much.
No, I understand, and that's why I don't think
Sure.
you should answer if you're not comfortable with that. And if I'm out of bounds with that question, I apologize.
That's okay. No, that's fine.
But where I'm going with this is based on what I'm hearing so far. I philosophically have no problem with option 2. And I mean, the bottom line is we've been in a housing crunch for how many years, and we're trying to be good partners to developers. You in good faith have invested in our community and tried to expand it. And maybe not 100% our fault, but was a snafu, and you guys lost almost a year.
Correct.
Of progress, and it's time is money, and it's not just a saying. It's a very real thing when you're talking about accruing interest on any kind of financing, and you guys are playing the long game. It takes years for this to culminate into any sort of profit. So again, I'm kind of the opinion we should do option 2, but I may be the lone voice on that.
Well, ask a question perhaps to the city attorney. In the development agreements, are there provisions for damages caused by delay on our part or the developer's part that would govern this?
Commissioner, those agreements are prepared by bond counsel. My recollection is that there is not. I don't know that anyone else in the room that would be familiar with it would know otherwise, but I do not recall that they address those types of scenarios.
I don't think so.
It's mostly the structure for the project, and then, of course, the financing of the project relative to the ultimate issuance of bonds. I don't recall that they address what you've asked about.
All right.
Well, I think I'm in agreement with the mayor on this. This project has went way too long, and my patience is every time I go by and I look. So moving forward, I think we're getting past this phase. I'm concerned with when we close it again to do the initial project that I believe it was Mr. Rimp brought it up, that why is this still closed, no work's going on. I think before that work takes place, we need to have a discussion with the contractor to make sure they got everything in order and set some deadlines to get it done.
Is it your contention that all the lots would have been sold and construction would have started had this road been available last year?
No, no. I think we could have sold, based on today's sales, so we currently have 4 lots sold, which have been sold in the last 45 days, and we have 3 contracts pending that have been in the last 2 weeks. Okay? So that's 7 lots total, and that's about average for the pricing and the size of the lots where we're at. Okay? So, does that answer your question?
Certainly, construction could have started on.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm just wondering, on what percentage of the lots did this hold you up on? I mean, that would be the percentage that I would be, in my mind, thinking that would be a fair percentage for the city to.
Well, I understand where you're going, but I guess on the other side of that is, I think there's some bigger lessons to be learned from the city's standpoint in terms of, things that could have been done differently and better. And, Commissioner Longbine states it very clearly as far as, work stoppages. There were periods of time, 5 weeks where there was absolutely no work going on at all. That's unacceptable. If I am doing a job, we can't have our crews not on a job for 5 weeks. We'd be fired.
No, that part I understand. I'm trying to figure out how because this type of error could happen anywhere we're doing construction, and I think if the city is going to do something after this, it's to figure out how we know where lines are or how we hold the utilities a bit more accountable for.
That's the point. Is the city kind of failed on monitoring the project.
Well, I think the line was found, but it took forever I guess it's been moved, but I'm assuming that's correct, yeah?
Yes.
Right. So just how do you prevent something like this from happening in the future?
I think another piece of advice that I would say is to never put a private project behind a public project. Had this been reversed and Cedar Point been allowed to be completed, as was on target to be May, I believe it was May 15th for substantial completion, and June of 2024 for partial completion, this wouldn't have happened.
We wouldn't be here.
Yeah,
But
certainly with the scheduling, I mean, the city, because we were doing this portion of the street, we felt like it would be better to get this done before we did the Cedar Ridge development. So we did make that decision to do, they were supposed to all happen in conjunction. And if we hadn't run into the AT&T line, it all would have gotten done. I mean, I have no doubt that that would have happened. And when we found the line, it wasn't like they said, hey, we're not going to fix this for 6 months. We thought they were coming out. I mean, so hindsight's 20/20 on all this. And certainly, yeah, we could have done stuff differently and maybe managed it a little bit differently. But this is kind of where we're at. So,
but I would still go back to we have been questioning from the beginning, from before we ever purchased the development, to at least 3 different times of why does Cedar Point have to pick up the cost of Cedar Ridge Drive when so many other households are benefiting from it. That's our, I still will continue that has been our primary argument from the beginning.
I think the biggest question is why wasn't it improved to the same standards when they changed it from a gravel road to Cedar Ridge Drive?
But that
from
the time to make that argument would have been before you started.
And we have.
I think that ship has sailed in my mind.
Well,
I think we're negligent as far as the damages, the delay we caused you. But I mean, nothing about that situation has changed since you started. I mean, it existed before then, and the time to make that presentation to us or argument, I guess, would have been then. I think that sets a dangerous precedent to go back and undo these agreements. It was a good idea when you signed it, and I think that idea has. I mean, your agreement then has to stand. I mean, because you would have content with doing it until this snafu.
We have questioned.
Well, I don't know if you were content, but you agreed to do it, right?
And we kept getting, it's part of the agreement. You can't do it. And then once we finally had to go to came before you last year or 2 years ago to get the process rolling with the special assessments. Since that time, we were made aware from another developer that they had protested, and so they were able to get out of a situation. So, we pressed it and pressed it and pressed it. And then it's like, we've got to keep going to get this project off the ground. And so we kind of gave in, and then, new information came to light. So anyways, we appreciate your time. Are there other questions or?
In terms of benefit district, or who benefits, I can attest that.
Well, anyone who lives beyond there is going to benefit.
Exactly.
As a driving enthusiast, Cedar Ridge is my favorite street in town.
That's a fair point. I take my motorcycle on there quite a bit.
Oh, you're the one.
No, I'm not. It's a Harley. It's not a sport bike.
I drive the speed limit.
Okay.
But I think this conversation may force us to take a little bit of a look on how we handle this in the future in terms of, maybe the city needs to take more of the financial burden of, like, for instance, we have the Wheatland addition, we have Magnolia Hills, and they go up right to the cusp of that point, but not past the point where they're going to have to help pitch in for Holmes Road. And maybe, as well intended as these policies are, maybe they are unintentionally hindering future development and progress. And again, I know that's a can of worms, and I don't want to open up during this agenda item necessarily, but maybe just kind of broach that notion. But I think the parameters of the Cools situation changed when we're not talking, a couple of weeks, a couple of months. I mean, we're talking almost a year. And I mean, I can think of situations where that would be a catastrophic event for a developer. I mean, you're gridlocked.
We are.
I mean, you can't make money if you can't sell your product, and if you can't build your product, you can't. I mean, I guess I'm very sympathetic because I'm putting myself in your shoes, and it's not a great situation.
You've convinced me of the validity of that argument. I just have a objection to basing my decision on the fact that other people are benefiting. I mean, it's like taxing everyone, east of East Magnolia improvements. Well, you're now in the benefit district. Well, we weren't here when you upgraded East Magnolia. There's always going to be someone beyond where you're building who will benefit from what you've done. But so you just have to look at it, what were the circumstances when you started your project? And in this case, you did have an opportunity to include all those other
It was
homes.
14 or 17 lots, but I think.
Or to make this
you're-
argument, that I understand that, yeah, but.
We were basically told we couldn't.
And if that's the case, then we shouldn't do it now. Because all you're doing, instead of using that process, is you're shifting it onto the city.
There's also, if I'm not mistaken, there's been a precedent that shows that we're benefiting more people than just Cedar Point, correct? That's what, there's a
Yes,
greater
there
benefit to
is
Cedar
a
Ridge
precedent for
improvements.
city to pick up some city at large
Correct.
costs on, particularly in this area.
I guess I'm going to look at this from a different direction in terms of past dealings with developers. Has there been a scenario like this play out in the past, or is this just such an outlier or anomaly that it's kind of potentially a one and done, and then we've learned from it and we'll move on?
Yeah, I guess I'm not aware of another developer coming back after the fact and asking for a change, and I don't know I don't know about those conversations on the front end.
Well, where I'm going with that is, if it hasn't happened in the past, then maybe the likelihood of it happening in the future, especially now that we're going to learn from some mistakes that have been made. Again, I'm thinking maybe a one and done situation, if you look at it from that perspective. But again, that's just my opinion, and I respect everybody else back here at the dais and whatever their thoughts are on it.
And I'm not taking a straw poll or predicting a vote. We may end up at the same place. It's just that one of the reasons for my ending up there may not be the same as theirs or yours.
Sure.
Any more discussion, or?
I'm leaning a little bit towards Dr. Davis. I get your argument, how that was already agreed upon, but I also see the other side of it too. As well, the delays costing you all the extra time and money, so I more than likely would vote for this, but on the basis of that.
Yeah, because I think they're two separate arguments.
Yeah.
And if we're going to end up in the same place anyway, then we can hope it's a one and done. I like that description.
I would agree. Well, with that, is there anybody from the public that'd like to comment on this item? Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Doug Remp, and I just want to add, it was mentioned, it's not why I'm here, by the way, but it was mentioned earlier about the roadway being closed for like a month last year. It was much longer from somebody's perspective that lives there, and I'm not trying to exaggerate that in any way, but if you look at all that area, all those neighborhoods involved, the only way in and out is via Marymount Road currently, and it seems like all they have to do is about 30 feet of concrete at this point in time. It might be 40 feet, it might be 45 feet, I'm not sure, but I know contractors from experience are a lot better at starting work than finishing it. I believe in this case is TNR, and they have projects going all over town, and that's probably just a small pain in their backside to get in there and finish up that little bit of concrete. But I would, if there's any pressure the city can put on them to finish that up, I would encourage it, because that roadway does get a lot of use, and there are people that live just east that every day as part of their commute or travel path has to take the trip around. And it's not the end of the world, but again, it's only one way in and one way out of a fairly large section of town. Thank you.
Ben Winholt, Salina. Looking at it from Mr. Remp's point of view, one way in and one way out, there's rules with the fire department as far as safety, fire safety, being only having one way in and one way out. We've already went through this with other developments that only have one way in, one way out. But the real thing that I want to bring up, and Mayor Linkowitz brought this up is you have had 3 other contractors as a group have changed the rules on grant money at least 3 times. And they were caught undersizing the houses, had their hands slapped. They got everything under the sun. And here you have a contractor that has played by the rules on everything, no grant money involved, has played by the rules, and you're arguing whether you're going to give it to him or not. If you don't give this contractor this situation, which was unlikely, I think if AT&T wouldn't have been involved, I wouldn't have waited almost 6 months to have them move that line. I would have had, within 6 weeks, they would have been called and said, what's going on? But you need to give it to them, because if you don't, you're going to set a precedence for the rest of the contractors that don't do or want to come to this town to do work, that they're not going to be able to work with the city. Only the 3 that have everything given to them. So that's something to keep in mind here as far when it comes to contractors. These people have a lot of money involved. The other contractors did too, but a lot of that was grant money given to them in their pocket, and you changed the rules 3 times for them. And all of them, 2 of them involved time. So, and the other one involved is because they couldn't sell the properties. So I think you need to look at it from that point of view, is if whatever you give one, you got to give to the other. Thank you.
Mayor, Commissioners, Todd Welch, 221 South Morse Drive. Didn't come here to speak on this behalf, but I just wanted to add some validity to their pain. I did try to purchase 2 lots from the Cools. I went directly to them to buy the lots. Couldn't buy any of the lots because, again, if you drove that, this was their street that they were told to put in was here. This street was here. Therefore, I went and purchased 2 additional lots, one in River Run and one in Cedar Ridge, development number 1. So there is some hardship there. I agree with you, Commissioner Davis. The deal was done on the original front end of the benefit district. I get where they're coming from there. Again, they're going to love me and hate me on both sides. One is I agree with you 100%. Number 2, they do have a hardship as a developer myself to set on those and pay specials and interest on your loan when the city didn't meet their end of the bargain, whether it's AT&T or not. I've fought with AT&T on other developments. They'll come in whenever they want. Just cut their line. They come much faster. But other than that, it's about all I know it could do. So they do have some hardship. Love to see them taken care of. I'm not sure what they're asking for, and I'm not here on their behalf. But there was some hardship because I moved on and didn't purchase 2 of their lots. Thank you.
Thank you. I will bring it back to the commission.
Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 25-8295, amending resolution number 23-8115 to allocate 100% of the cost of the Cedar Ridge Drive improvements to the city at large.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 25-8295, amending resolution number 23-8115 to allocate 100% of the cost of the Cedar Ridge Drive improvements to the city at large. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Passes 4-0. And we get Commissioner Hoppick back in the room, please. Okay, on to 6.1, development business.
Item 6.1, consider approval of ordinance number 25-11243, amending the South 9th Street Corridor Overlay District to allow automobile repair as a conditional use within the district.
Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a zoning text amendment that deals with what is known as the South 9th Street Overlay District. And that's an overlay district that extends from roughly 1/2 mile south of Schilling Road to 1/2 mile south of Waterwell Road. And it's designed to be an overlay over existing zoning and has a much shorter list of uses and a much higher aesthetic development standards than our base zoning districts. And the applicant in this case is Mr. Jeff Mays, who's a commercial realtor, and he represents H&M Investments, LLC, and Riffle Development Company, Inc., and they both own property within the overlay district. And he has received interest from multiple auto body collision repair businesses interested in locating in Salina, and they have mostly been zeroing in on the South 9th corridor in terms of locations, and two of the businesses have focused on locations in the Lakeside Addition, which is located on the west side of South 9th Street across from the Kubota plant, and they're also focused in on Riffle Addition number 2, also on the west side of South 9th Street, and Riffle Addition number 2 is undeveloped except for the Hilton Garden Inn property. And so these properties are both Zone C5 service commercial, but because they're in the overlay district, auto body repair is not listed as a permitted or conditional use. And so in this case, the applicant's requesting that the list of conditional uses allowed within the overlay district be expanded to include auto body collision repair businesses, to include outdoor screening as well. And so the applicant believes that there are locations along South 9th that are suitable for and have shown interest by auto body repair businesses. And so if this request is approved this evening, it would give landowners and developers within the corridor the opportunity to apply for a conditional use permit for an auto body repair shop, which is currently not permitted at all within the corridor overlay district. So if this is approved, any location would still have to be approved on a case-by-case basis based on a specific plan by the Planning Commission, but it would at least give the businesses an opportunity to request approval and submit their plans. The primary concern from a zoning standpoint about some auto body repair businesses is unsightly outdoor storage of vehicles awaiting repair that often occurs at these businesses. It's often a code compliance complaint that city staff will receive, but within the overlay district there are some specific requirements for screening all outdoor storage and requires it to be inside and rear yards only. So the overlay district does have safeguards on outdoor storage. The Planning Commission heard this request at their May 6th meeting, and they approved a motion 6-1 recommending that the list of conditional uses in the overlay district being expanded to include, and they use the term automobile repair, which is a little broader term that does include auto body and collision repair, but it's a term that already exists in the ordinance, and so they've basically approved the intent of what the applicant requested, and if the term automobile repair is added, it will include auto body and collision repair. So your options this afternoon would be to concur with the recommendation of the Planning Commission and approve the ordinance that's attached that adds automobile repair, including screened outdoor storage, to the list of conditional uses. You could amend the ordinance that's before you tonight to limit it to just auto body and collision repair as originally requested, or you could postpone consideration of this text amendment to a future meeting date if you feel like additional information needs to be provided by staff or the applicant, or you could maintain the status quo and decide that no uses should be added to the overlay district, and if that's the case, a motion should be made to deny approval of the attached ordinance 25-11-243. So the ordinance that's before you adds the term automobile repair, which is broad enough to include auto body and collision repair, and if that's approved, then it would allow applicants to enter into contracts to purchase property in the overlay district and apply for approval of their business plan. So with that, I'd be open to any questions. Mr. Mays, the applicant's here as well, if you have questions of him.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew. Any questions?
Did the owner of the Hilton Garden Inn have any comment on this?
This is a text amendment, so there's no notice because this is not property specific. It applies through the whole overlay district, but if there is a specific application that's filed in the riffle edition, then the owner of Hilton Garden Inn would be notified. So the notification would occur when there's a conditional use permit application filed.
So that if such a business were located, it could theoretically buy property just on the north side of, I'll call it a street or road, the entrance into the hotel. There's vacant lot north in the hotel.
Yeah, Todd Circle is as the name implies, is a circular street, and the south end of the circle is Hilton Garden Inn, and then it loops back and it has lots at the north end. And so if a lot is chosen and it's within 200 feet of the Hilton Garden Inn, then they would get notice of the request and be invited to submit comments or attend the Planning Commission public hearing. But that is the advantage of this approach, is that it still requires that the auto body collision repair get approved on a case-by-case basis after notice is provided and an opportunity for neighboring property owners to weigh in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any member of the public wish to comment on this item? And I will bring it back to the commission.
Turn this on. Mayor Linkowitz, I move we concur with the recommendation of the Salina of the Planning Commission and approve ordinance number 25-11243, adding automobile repair, including screened outdoor storage, to the list of conditional uses in the CO district.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to.
One question, I'm sorry.
Sure.
When the word including is added in that, does that word including infer requiring? I mean, could the word require be substitute? I mean, in thought process.
Our thought is the word including means requiring, so that if there's outdoor, from our standpoint, it's either entirely within the building or it includes screened outdoor storage, but not outdoor storage that's not screened.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks. All right, we have a motion and a second to concur with the Planning Commission and the recommendation to approve ordinance number 25-11243, adding automobile repair, including screened outdoor storage, to the list of conditional uses in the CO district. And we're going to do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoppick?
Aye.
Commissioner Ivy?
Aye.
Commissioner Longbine?
Aye.
Mayor Linkowitz?
Aye. All right, on to 6.2.
Item 6.2, consider authorizing the mayor to execute a license agreement with Overlook Estates LLC to place and maintain a guardhouse structure in the subdivision entrance right-of-way.
Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a license agreement application that has been submitted by Todd Welsh, a local contractor, and he has submitted that on behalf of Overlook Estates LLC. If you're familiar with that area, it's an extension off of the existing River Run addition on the west side of South Marymount Road, and the infrastructure serving that development is nearing completion, except for an off-site water line that's still under design and hasn't yet been constructed. But as part of the infrastructure design, there was a small circular island that was designed in the center of Overlook Drive, and part of the purpose for that island was to mark the transition from where River Run addition enters and becomes the Overlook Estates addition. And so it's an entry feature that marks that point, and the request that's before you is to allow construction of a guardhouse type structure that would be placed in that circular island in the public right-of-way for Overlook Drive. And so the plans call for a roughly 6 foot wide by 8 foot deep structure that would be a little over 10 feet tall at its peak. It would be constructed of masonry with a stucco exterior, and it would have a door and window and all the architectural and functional elements of a functioning guardhouse. But to the best of staff's knowledge, it would not be staffed or manned, and its primary function would be to provide a sheltered location for the community mailbox serving future homeowners in Overlook Estates. So one of the changes in our residential subdivisions is, I believe it was around 16 or 17, and Mr. Welsh's developments were among the first to experience that, but the U.S. Postal Service announced that they were no longer allowing individual street side mailboxes in front of residential dwellings, that new subdivisions had to create locations to have community mailboxes where residents would have to go to pick up their mail. And so the idea is that this would be open on the west or rear side, and that's where the community mailboxes would be located for Overlook Estates. And so when we're working with new residential subdivisions on community mailboxes, those are done under the authority of the U.S. Postal Service, and so we're not doing license agreements for that. But what is required for the license agreement is the structure that's being proposed to shelter that community mailbox. And so in looking at this, staff believes that a mechanism should be put in place to make sure the guardhouse structure is maintained, and if it's not maintained, that it can be removed without any cost to the city. So the actual agreement would be between the City of Salina and Overlook Estates LLC, which consists of North MacArthur, Debbie DiBiase, and Derek Lee, and also with the Overlook Estates Homeowners Association, which right now consists of those same people. And so the purpose of having this agreement is to document that the developers and future homeowners association have been granted approval to place this structure in an island in the public right-of-way, but that the city is not responsible for its repair or replacement or ongoing maintenance. And so it gives the city the authority to remove or repair the guardhouse if for some reason it's not maintained, and extends that not just to the homeowners association, but if the homeowners association should go inactive, that would allow any costs for removal to or repair to go back to the individual lot owners. And so if this was approved, it would be recorded in the registered deeds office and run with all the lots in the subdivision. At this point, it does not appear from our review of the drawings that any kind of subdivision identification sign is being proposed, but those are allowed to be placed in the public right-of-way, and there are a number of subdivision entry signs around the community to identify subdivisions. We have contacted all of the local utility providers, and none of them had any objections to this location or the placement of this structure. They just indicated that they wanted to remind the applicant and contractor to check with one call before giving any work in that location. So the cost of this would be borne by the developer. All maintenance costs would be borne by the homeowners association or individual lot owners in the future. And so as far as this evening's action, your first option would be to approve a motion authorizing the mayor to sign a license agreement with Overlook Estates LLC to allow the placement of this structure in the Overlook Drive right-of-way in the island marking the entrance to the subdivision. You could postpone consideration of this request to allow us to provide additional information to help you reach a decision, or you could decline to approve the license agreement and provide the applicant and staff with additional direction. So we have provided some elevation drawings that show the proposed three-dimensional look of this and its materials, and then we have an Exhibit A that goes with the license agreement, and that depicts where this would be located within the island, and that all the dimensions do in fact fit. So with that, I would be open to any questions. Mr. Welsh is here, who would be involved in its construction if you have questions about the structure itself.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Andrew?
Just one. How would this license agreement be affected if there was a future desire to man that house?
I don't know that it would affect that from the standpoint of what your licensing is the construction of the structure itself. We don't necessarily have. We have one proposal at this point that hasn't been executed yet for the Magnolia Village horizontal apartments, where they're proposing to have a gated entry but no guard or guardhouse. We're just simply reporting that we're referring to this as a faux guardhouse because, as we understand it, it's a shelter for the mailboxes that's designed to make people think it's a guardhouse.
Right, because the example you cited, that leads to a private.
Yes, I did. I mean, the reason we're here is that Overlook Drive is a public street. It is not a private street. And so it's public right-of-way, it's a public street, and to place this in a public street requires public approval.
Right. So it could not be turned into a true guard house on a public street.
I don't see how we could allow for that unless they came back and requested that somehow the street be allowed to be converted to private.
Okay, because there is another similar structure at the corner of Iron and Marymount. As you come up east on Iron, just before you go down into the bricks, there's a similar structure actually on the south side of that intersection, right on the corner. In fact, when I first moved here, I thought it was a guardhouse. Then I realized there's never anybody in there. But it's decorative.
There should be no reason to guard a public street.
Right. Okay.
All right.
I did have a comment for Mr. Welsh.
Okay.
When I opened the packet, I was kind of taken aback. A guardhouse, I think, is a very poor choice of description, and for our community as a whole. And anyway, I did some little research of coming up with a more user-friendly name. A postal pavilion.
Okay.
Did you trademark that, or am I allowed to use that?
That come from Grok.
Perfect. Thank you for your recommendation. Definitely the gentleman will take that under consideration. I do like it. Todd Welch, 221 South Morse Drive. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for your time in looking at this. A couple of questions that would be on there. Number one, when Mr. Lee put this development together, it was done very well in the fact of not only is it decorative in the center, it does slow down traffic. If you're coming down there, it's a very long street, so it will slow traffic down going into that development. You may notice at Stone Lake or out at Highland Meadows Hamlet, they chose to put in a decorative large stone and rock. Commissioner Davis, you're exactly correct. It's ornamental. There will be a door to be able to open up things. We're hoping that UPS or Amazon or something could store large packages in there rather than taking it directly to the home. But you're exactly correct. It is a decorative piece of landscape, make it appear that is, but it will never be functional for anybody to be inside of it. The window actually will just be a false fake window to make it appear of that way, but there will be no way for somebody to sit in there. I did tell Mr. MacArthur North that I would put a cardboard cutout in there if he'd like, so he could wave at everybody coming in. He didn't appreciate that, so that did not make it any further. One thing I would like to say is it is kind of a neat thing. Mr. Andrew is correct. I was one of the first people who had to put in cluster boxes that got introduced. I'd never even heard of them before. And they are unsightly if you set them out by the side of the curb. They're not great to look at. Again, Mr. Lee came up with a great idea of putting it behind the the postal shack. I'm not sure what that I still got to get used to that. The postal shack, by putting it behind there, it'll be covered as you check your mail if it's raining or bad weather. There will be no electricity ran out to the median. We will do solar lighting. So again, for the homeowners who purchase there, it'll be nice to be able to park, be in a secured area, well lit, and not be off on the side of the road to be able to get that. So it'll be done very nice, all done in stucco. I don't know if they had it to be able to put up on there, but it is stucco. There's stone. It'll be done very nice and landscaped very well.
Will it be keyed where the residents and the postman have a key to get in?
It'll be a key code. So each person, the postal will have a key code to enter the door if they want to slide packages in there. The other thing with the cluster boxes is it does come with a large, if you end up with an Amazon package or something from the, I guess not Amazon, they're not going to use the post office, but you can get a key, put the package in, and then when you open up your box, the key for the large package is in your box if it's from the Postal Service.
Sure.
We were trying to eliminate the Amazon or any additional packages from UPS being able to go all the way down in there, go down these long driveways. They'll just drop everything out at the postal Amazon / UPS drop-off building.
Non-guarded building.
Non-guarded building, yes. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have one, if I may.
Certainly.
The license agreement includes a determination by the city engineer that it is a safe utilization of the right-of-way. And I'm not substituting my judgment for the city engineer, but I'm looking to Mr. Andrew. Do we believe, and I don't believe Mr. Kowach is here at the moment, whether he had opportunity to evaluate this from the standpoint of the actual, as described, utilization of the house, whatever we call it, as a UPS or any delivery drop-off point? I don't believe so. And my question is whether this additional information warrants allowing the city engineer to evaluate the traffic and safety question with full information rather than the fact that it was previously just an empty, whatever you want to call it, as opposed to somewhere that large trucks would be stopping and delivering packages.
My understanding was the intent of the original design always had the house or structure in there. That's what Mr. Lee told me. I had the same question that's there. If you drive in there and you park to get out to get your mail from behind there, traffic flow can still go on both sides. There is enough the way it was built. I don't have an overall aerial view of it. But the way that it goes in, you can go in, pull into what I call the center area, get out to check your mail, then proceed without impeding traffic both on the right and left-hand side, the way that it was, I don't want to call it a roundabout, but the way that it was done.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I'm not trying to substitute my judgment or even predict what Mr. Kowach might think. I just am asking whether we feel like he had opportunity to evaluate that aspect.
I was actually going to ask if the lane was widened there so that you could actually put a car presumably in the center of the road while other traffic came by.
It honestly is, I don't know how that's a whole lot different than what currently takes place in any subdivision in Stone Lake as it is now. the resident, what is a street, 33 or 60? Dean, what's a residential street? 33 feet. So if a car stops currently to get out to check their mail, they park in the street. Stone Lake, Highland, wherever the rest of them are, they're parking in the middle of the street, getting out and or on the side and checking, no different than what would take place here potentially.
Well, again, I'm not trying to play engineer, but as I recall the drawings, you're taking, by putting it in the middle, there is a certain level of, I guess you'd say, bulb out, for lack of a better term. But again, I don't mean to sound like I'm questioning it. I just, as we talked about that potential utilization or planned utilization for those types of large truck deliveries.
Okay, then we're excluding FedEx or UPS. No, I don't. I mean, that was the intent of it, was if they wanted to do a large package. Now, if you want to basically say they can't stop there and they need to drive down and go into somebody's driveway, I don't know that Mr. Lee's going to have a problem with that. But
or I guess the other solution would be to widen the road to actually provide for a parking spot.
And my only point is I think we're all starting to start engineering this, and I'm not suggesting that it should or shouldn't work. I just know that that document inherently and does have a written acknowledgement of a finding by the city engineer that it's a safe utilization of the right-of-way. And I just don't, I'm sorry, I don't know how to answer that tonight as to whether that was a consideration that Mr. Kowach
well, I don't see any difference in, if you look at delivery trucks all over the city, they park wherever and block whatever. And
right, because this is only one lane in each direction past that.
I've been there. And
no, I mean, even on the drawing here.
So if you park behind it, essentially you still have 2 lanes of traffic. So your exposure would be, in theory, you open your door, no more than if you did a curbside parking on a roadway. And what comes to mind with what Commissioner Longbine just mentioned, I think of when the U.S. Postal Service delivers on Ohio on some of the residential streets there, and it can be a bit of a debacle at times, but they figure it out. Minimal traffic, and you have kind of that, I guess it could stack up in theory, but I guess the question I have is there not a set protocol for something like this where we need to have somebody sign off on it from engineering or from a public safety standpoint? And not that I want to get mired in those details, but if it's something that would alleviate liability on our part, we probably need to do our due diligence.
The thing that comes to mind also, sorry about that.
In here, there's only 11 parcels. It's not like 100.
Yeah.
That's a fair
But it does
point.
bring up a good point. There's 11 parcels there, but it does bring up a good point in the event if Stone Lake wanted to do it and it was right off of the entryway of Ohio, you know what I mean? Like if they came in there. But on this particular one, there are 11, it's a dead-end street. There are 11 homeowners, which most likely will be the homeowners going in and out of there who are going to know to pull in and behind which by the time you get around there, it's no different than a residential street that's currently in place that houses a cluster box in itself. Once you get past that section, which is where they're going to park, the street is the same width as the current cluster box we have in Stone Lake, Magnolia Hills, other places, in my opinion. But I think it's worth being able to be looked at.
Yeah. The problem I see it, and I keep looking to Mr. Andrew to tell me or Mr. Wood, if I'm overstating the concern, but you've got this takes the space out of the center of the paved street. So you're down to whatever the width of the 2 sides are.
The street does kind of do a little bit of a
you do look, the street juts out a little bit. So if the person parks either in front of it or behind it, you still have, I think, have sufficient room. I guess from listening to this, can we approve this with
conditional on
with
approval?
a condition upon approval by?
This is under in the license agreement for subdivision entrance guardhouse structure, point D under recitals, says the city engineer has concluded that under the circumstances allowing the association developer to construct and maintain a guardhouse structure in a location proposed will neither interfere nor compromise safety in the use of public right-of-way. Does that mean he has done it, or we would approve this?
Well, I think that the question is there new information tonight that was not considered as part of
I guess
the
if
city
that,
engineers?
if that is the question, I met one-on-one with Mr. Kowach and reviewed the drawings and plans with him, and he concluded that this, as proposed, did not constitute a traffic hazard or public safety concern, but that was based on it being a shelter for a community mailbox. He understood that. It did not go beyond that point into looking at dropping off of packages or things of that nature. But his understanding was that it was a shelter for a community mailbox serving the subdivision. And this was also sent to the engineering department before that, to other staff members, and to the street department and numerous other departments before it got back with no comments or concerns.
But there was discussion about dropping mail off.
There was.
At that location,
it was understood that the whole
necessarily
purpose of
UPS
this is to serve as community mailbox, not just a faux structure.
Oh, certainly. And I was well aware that he had evaluated it from that standpoint. The only thing I heard that prompted me to even ask the question, and I appreciate everyone taking the time on it, is whether he consciously processed the prospect of the major delivery companies with their size of trucks stopping there and placing packages inside the whatever we're calling it. That's the only question I had. And
I don't even know that that is the intent. That's a conversation we had that was there. I'm not even sure that Amazon, FedEx, or UPS will drop off. Mm-hmm. That is not a meeting we had there. It seems very convenient for me if they want to do that than to drive down everybody's driveway to do that. But if we need to hang a sign that says UPS, FedEx, do not stop here, go to the house.
But based on the comments you made earlier, you have to have a key to enter it. So FedEx and UPS probably wouldn't have a key to enter the. Yeah.
At the time when we were there, it seemed like a very convenient way to do it. Obviously, maybe it's not convenient, and they don't get the key code to get in. It's only of what was addressed, which was the mail building. And they can continue to drive to the houses, honk their horn, drop off the package on the doorstep, as they do every other house. And we will use this strictly as a mail house.
And I have no idea.
I'm guessing if it becomes a concern, the 11 people that are going to have lots there are going to address it.
Yeah. I'm not even quite sure I'm going to put a door on it right now.
Yeah. So.
I mean, the intent was for it to be totally decorative. If Mr. Lee and Mr. MacArthur would watch this, they're going to have a fit, only because this was not the initial plan. It was when we were up there, it would be, wow, wouldn't it be handy if they could throw the packages in there and you could stop and pick them up? And we all went, well, that sounds feasible to me. Obviously, it doesn't sound feasible. So we would like to go back to a postal shack house and pavilion. Thank you.
The pavilion.
The postal pavilion. Thank you. I'm going to write that right here.
Well, and
which
again
appears to be approved by the city, that they would not stop or impede in traffic the way that it was built as a postal pavilion.
My concern is not to determine the outcome. It was simply that the city engineer is the one who signed off, and I'm not sure he knew of this concept.
Right.
That's my sole concern.
Right.
If he says,
and a good concern, but what I'm saying
good
is,
to go, then
but
good
what I'm
to
going to go on record in saying is those entities will not have the code to the door if there is a door put on at all now. Maybe a fake door. The thing is 6 foot wide to fit within there. I mean, you're not going to stand or do what is in there very much. There's no real reason for us to put a door on it other than you're just going to get cobwebs and things like that. We were just trying to find a utility use for this structure of which was going to be this wide. So if you would like to put an amendment on that and or something, that would be great.
I think we've gotten a little deep here.
Sure.
The primary purpose is the community mailbox, which my son and his houses, that's all they've ever had in Wichita. And it's always, one of the kids to get the key and go get the mail. Myself, I get a package that's fairly big and heavy. I'd rather have it put on my doorstep than have to go haul it home.
Like I said, I don't even know that it's legal for them to drop it off of which we're even talking about. I think it has to go to the doorstep, they take a picture of it, and off they go. Totally.
I know my son
should not have
done a maze. They get it both ways in the box or on their step.
Yeah.
It does feel like we're getting a little mired in the minutia, so to speak. Again, back to the DHL and UPS and FedEx. We don't even know what their policies are pertaining to package drop-offs, and I mean, they may not sign off on it. So to me, it's U.S. Postal Service and only U.S. Postal Service. And as we're having this conversation, I'm kind of reflecting on where I know of other banks of mailboxes, and I mean, I've even seen them on the corner, which seems very counterintuitive, and admittedly, that's a development from the 90s. And it probably is not a practice anymore, but I don't see where there's any additional exposure versus if you were pulling over to hypothetically to a curb. So you have 11 lots, minimal traffic. Well, gentlemen, it's whatever you feel comfortable with. If we need to do some kind of provision on contingent on approval by, or my big thing is public safety in terms of we know the fire apparatus can go through there. We know, if there's that kind of thing, and that's to me that's the big question. We already know the answer to that. If
for the city engineer to sign off, 48 hours. I mean, the engineer would certainly know if there's something really wrong with it.
Yeah, I'd say 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Once he has the opportunity to have
that
additional information.
Mr. Andrews says he's already reviewed it, correct?
Yeah, if he could review, if he wants to review it as the postal pavilion as submitted that he reviewed before, no key code shall be given to anybody else. That would be fine. Thank you.
Thanks.
And that's the only thing I'm uncomfortable with is that description.
So Commissioner Hoppick, your idea, prove it with contingent upon?
I reviewed and provided the drawings with Mr. Kowach, the city engineer. We reviewed them together one-on-one, and what I described to him, the intent was a structure that was going to shelter a community mailbox for U.S. Postal Service delivery, at which point he said he didn't have any concerns about it.
I'm comfortable with that.
I am too, because we don't even know if anybody else is going to use it.
All right. There's no more comments. Let's bring it to the public. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, I do have one question or need for clarification. I didn't count them all, but I counted maybe 10 to 12 references to the term guardhouse structure in the license agreement. So if the commission desires for the structure to have a different name than guardhouse structure, then that should be part of any motion, I think.
Decorative postal pavilion?
I'm not too worried about the nomenclature of it.
Yeah,
It's
we know what it is.
Yeah, I mean,
Ben Winholt, Salina, thank Mr. Welsh for doing a little more art for the city. If we're going to put up a decorative house, I can tell you, I can probably put a little light on this conversation of UPS and FedEx. I have a son-in-law who's a UPS driver, and they have these pads that have the address and where the package is delivered. It also has a camera on it. They are to take a picture that that package is on your front porch with the address showing. So I don't think UPS or FedEx is going to want to put them in one central location in a box. That opens up a liability for them to have a missing package, because that's the reason why they take the picture as proof that when you call in, I didn't get my package. Here it is. There's your home address. It's on the front porch. It was on the front porch when delivered. So that's probably a moot point that they could do this.
And I'm just going to add, Doug Remp again. I've lived in a neighborhood in Arizona that had far more than 11 property owners that has had these cluster boxes going in and out with just one lane each way. And I'd never noticed it being an issue. And we're talking 50 to 75 homes in a, actually kind of a subgated, but going through a gate with the cluster box there. And I just wanted to throw that out there. I see how these meetings get so long. I mean, we're dealing with 11 homes, and anyway, I don't envy you in that regard.
And I told my wife we'd be done by 6.
Good afternoon, John Blanchard. I'm going to steal a line from Todd and from Doug. I did not come here to stand up on this item. But when I heard some of the questions from Greg, triggered a few questions on my part. I followed the platting process of Overlook Estates quite closely, mainly because of the fire code issues. And so I just never recalled that maybe there were amendments made to bulb out the right-of-way. So that would, to me, trigger an amendment to the plat, because now your city-owned right-of-way would be a little bit bigger, especially if you're bulbing out and making the right-of-way wider and doing a license agreement and not building this structure on land that was dedicated as belonging to the homeowners association. So, which triggers one other question, and I'll sit down, is who's responsible if somebody drives home, somebody's not someone that lives up there, but somebody that visits, or a FedEx driver runs into that structure, damages it, and kind of who's responsible, and who holds the insurance on that? That's probably in the license agreement. But my main concern is that when we change the shape of the right of way, those property lines are impacted, and that kind of can trigger an amendment to the plat. So just a question.
Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
I realize I'm the cause of this problem, and I'll try to keep this moving. I'm looking to Mr. Andrew again. In response to the question, am I correct that the proposed construction is actually all within currently platted street right-of-way?
That is correct. There is a profile where we have a 50-foot wide right-of-way, and the straight portion of the street is 29 feet wide. And so with the island and the bulb out, instead of having, at 29 feet and 50 feet of right-of-way, you have roughly 10.5 feet of area between the curb and the property line. In this location, because of the bump out of the street, you're going to have 1.5 to 2 feet from the edge of curb to the right-of-way. But it all fits within the existing right-of-way. It's just bumped out at that location. But if you looked at the right-of-way, it looks straight, but that's because the curb line where the bump out is much closer to the property line than the straight portion of the street.
Appreciate that. I don't care where this ends up from the standpoint of whether that license agreement is approved or not, with one exception, and that is, in my role, I represent the city of Salina as a municipal corporation. That can be any number of employees, it can be staff at any given time, and usually when I'm in this room, it is you all. But I will have to acknowledge that at this moment in time, I am representing the city engineer. And I know that the city engineer has not been advised of the prospect of, I know Mr. Andrew told him everything he knew, but what I'm concerned about is if you asked Mr. Kowach, got him on the phone or talked to him as fast as possible in the morning, whether he knew that there was the prospect of packages being dropped off, picked up, then, may I, please? Then that's fine. And I think it's a fairly quick answer. So I feel compelled in what is a really extraordinary circumstance just to give him that opportunity to say, no, that's fine, it works, and that'll be it. If he does have a concern, and we've already approved the license agreement, then we've got a problem. That's all I'm trying to avoid, is that potential problem tomorrow morning if he is advised of these circumstances and has a different thought than what that document currently reflects as to his finding. He is the city engineer. He's the one who's responsible for making that determination. So I realize my point took the conversation off in a number of different directions. I don't know what to do about that other than to just say, if you all would see fit to give him that opportunity, I think that would be the advisable course of action.
Would it be administratively best to postpone this to a later date or approve it contingent upon his?
I would think the latter. I don't think it's necessary to delay what I'm looking to Mr. Wood, I think, and Mr. Andrew. I think it could be resolved quickly, assuming Mr. Kowach is available and here tomorrow. I think it is a very quick conversation. He'll know from his engineering viewpoint whether the new information is of concern or not.
And if you were to have concern, then it would come back to us.
Yeah, if he has a concern, then there's still opportunity to figure out what needs to happen or not. So, I mean, I hope he's fine with it. Yeah. I really do, as you might imagine.
The comment I made earlier was approving this, and then what I had was with the approval of the city engineer based upon today's discussions. Does that sound? I mean, and then we're approving it, and if he finds an issue, then it's not approved.
Right, and the mayor would not be asked to sign it this evening. So,
understood.
That's perfect.
So, thank you. Appreciate the clarity on that.
Mayor, one last comment. If that is going to take place, whoever makes the phone call, I would prefer that you state that the applicant chose not to have any additional parcels dropped off, as the applicant has stated that there should be a motion inside there that says this shall be approved, yet no additional parcels, UPS, FedEx, Amazon, shall partake in dropping off at the postal pavilion. To make a phone call to ask if it's okay that they drop off at the postal pavilion when the applicant has asked or has said, great, we choose not to do that. It will be a postal pavilion as stated and as reviewed from the engineer, to ask if those items can be done, for him to go back and say, boy, I'm not sure, let's open an investigation up on this whole thing, when the applicant is now saying, make an amendment that says we approve as reviewed, as the applicant stated. To make a phone call in the morning to talk about items of which the applicant has said is not going to take place does not make any sense to me. Thank you.
And I got a question, Mr. Welch, and maybe I misunderstood, but earlier when we were talking about this, you discussed dropping off FedEx and UPS Air. Was that?
There's no doubt that I said that.
Okay.
And when Mr. Bingston. Greg. Maybe a little worked up, Greg.
So I guess that's my question.
Yeah, well, but I thought that was that. Again, if you knew what the funniness of this, of the actual conversation that took place standing there, of what are we going to do with the inside of a 5-foot building, and out of our mouths of talking, going, well, wouldn't it be nice they could open up the door and throw in a package? And throughout this application and us talking, this came out, of which now brought up this major thing, of which I'm saying there's a coded door, or at this point maybe no door for them to even put a package in there. The applicant is telling you that. If you would like to make a motion that says that there will be a locked door on there that's only given to the HOA, so they may enter it to pull out the cobwebs or whatever they want to store Christmas lights. Yeah. Let them do that. But that will not be given to anybody other than a member of the HOA. Right. It is back to a postal pavilion.
Right. I don't think our concern is what goes on inside the house. Our concern is what goes on with the vehicles standing still,
and if the concern was
making the delivery.
Large vehicles, we will not do large vehicles that will even need to stop there. As a member of the audience said, they probably can. That's what's so funny about it. If UPS and FedEx and Amazon sitting there listening, they're going, oh, we would never do that anyway. Move on. We can't do that. We got to take a picture at your doorstep. We got to deliver it to the address, not to a fictional postal pavilion in the middle of the street. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mayor, if I may, I believe Mr. Welch's suggestion is certainly a satisfactory resolution as well, if that's more appealing to you all. The license agreement would simply be amended to address.
But it still doesn't resolve our major concern, which was the vehicles passing each other if there's a vehicle.
Well, it does, because the city engineer has approved this for postal reasons. So this, if we put that amendment, if we add that language in there, then the city engineer has said, yes, we're okay with the post office being there. What happened is comments were made about UPS and FedEx delivering, which then brought Mr. Bingston into the conversation of, has this been approved by the city engineer for those type of deliveries? So what the applicant's saying now is, we're going to take out FedEx, UPS being able to deliver there, which again goes back to allowing the Postal Service to deliver, which was approved originally. Am I right?
That's correct.
I said a lot. I hope I'm right. So.
And is the applicant okay with that name recommendation?
The applicant is.
Okay.
As long as the Postal Service has a small vehicle. Right. If they show up with a big truck, you're right back where I think the city attorney's concern was. So,
well, I am confident that Mr. Andrew and Mr. Kowash discussed anything to do with the delivery of mail.
Yeah. Okay. So how did we want to amend that?
Rather than exclude,
how
say it's only for the post office.
For U.S. Postal.
Yeah.
I don't.
For use.
Because just as soon as you name 3 or 4 package companies, there's going to be another one.
Yeah, I think what I would do is make this motion as number 1, and at the end of it said, for exclusive use by the United States Postal Service.
You want to add the name change in there?
I have no idea what that's supposed to be. I heard
Postal Pavilion, I believe, was the
substitute guardhouse for Postal Pavilion.
That's okay. I'm going to try this. Mayor Linkwitz, I move we authorize the mayor to sign a license agreement with Overlook Estates LLC to allow the placement of a 6-foot by 8-foot postal pavilion structure in the Overlook Drive right-of-way in the island, marking the entrance to the Overlook Estates addition for exclusive use by the United States Postal Service.
Should we have the HOA to that? Not trying to, or, no, all right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of a motion authorizing the mayor to sign a license agreement with Overlook Estates LLC to allow for placement of a 6-foot by 8-foot postal pavilion structure in the Overlook Drive right-of-way in the island, marking the entrance to Overlook Estates addition to be used exclusively by the U.S. Postal Service. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Hopefully that'll suffice. On to other business.
Mayor, thank you for...
No, thank you. No, that's what you're here for, sir. So,
I have a few things, other business. I don't know if people have observed West Crawford. The Ambassador Hotel is essentially demolished. And I think it's a victory for the entire city. And this commission is a long process. I want to thank the property owner for following through and demolishing the structure. And I think all that's left is hauling away rubble. So the People's Choice sculpture, Going Home, now displayed in the museum temporarily. It was my hope that it would be ready to be placed before Memorial Day for the veteran service at Sunset Park, where it's going to be replaced. Is there any chance that's going to happen? I'm asking staff.
I don't think so. No, there's no way it will be ready at that time.
Okay, we'll shoot for Veterans Day. And as we heard earlier, update on the River Renewal project. I'll remind people there's an event for the public tomorrow at 5:30 at the Tony's Center in the Great Plains Convention Hall. So anyone interested in that, please attend.
Right. Want to bring up the issue of our draft of the city manager brochure. For us, I'm of the opinion we still need to do some more work. For us to take action to set what I think would be a needed special meeting, I need to add this to today's agenda, or is, now that we're at the end of the meeting, so it's an official item, would that be preferred?
Yes, Commissioner. I think to do that correctly would involve a two-step process. First of all, that would be a consideration of whether to add that discussion to today's agenda, which you can by a 4/5 vote, right. 4 of 5.
Right.
And then that would put you in a position of discussing however you all might wish to proceed.
All right. In that case, I would move that we add to today's agenda item number, which I'll leave to the city clerk, further discussion of the draft city manager recruitment brochure.
We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for addition of an item to the agenda regarding the recruitment brochure for city manager position and discussion thereof. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Okay. I think the draft we have is closer to where I'd like it to be, but it still needs some polishing and compared to the last version, minor adjustments, but adjustments that would be easiest to do with the author. And I would suggest, if possible, we could have a special meeting via Zoom. I don't know that, I'm blocking on his last name. Is it Wolf? No, his first name is Chris. Someone help me out. Lowe, thank you. I don't know if it would rise to where Mr. Lowe would need to travel here. At least from my suggested edits. I don't know about the other four.
I think Zoom would be fine.
I agree. And I think the format that we held our special meeting a week or so ago worked well. We could coordinate with Mr. Lowe on a date and time he's available and we're available.
And it may be more useful to him if we actually do email each one of our separate suggestions to him so he can have some consensus. He may be able to work a lot of these out even before the meeting, but it's, in my mind, it's just not quite right yet. So I would move that we have a special meeting next Monday. I'm just going to...
Monday's Memorial Day. Oh, no, it's not, is it?
We got 2 more weeks.
Yeah, that's right.
So the 19th?
19th, yeah.
At, looked like 4 o'clock worked well the last time. So no one has to leave work early.
I think I can make that work.
Mayor, if I may, one clarification.
Yes, sir.
And that would be, if you anticipate potentially wanting to act on approval of a version, the final version, in that same setting, that would dictate whether that was in the study session format that you were in first time, or whether you want combination study session and regular meeting, or just a regular meeting. But in order to make that final approval, we do need to have you in a meeting session, special or regular. But
well, I guess everyone else would know what their suggested edits would be. Is it something you think we could finish in one day and approve, or you'd rather?
I think we're going to give him suggestions. I still think it's going to have to be massaged to come back to us. I don't think we're approving it at the study session. Okay. I just think, based on what I've seen, I'm not sure I'm approving it until I see the final product.
And what we have in front of us today, it's much improved, but I think there is still some inaccuracies.
There's some mistakes in there that I have that need to be corrected.
So we would just go for a special study session format.
I agree.
I'll make that a motion so that for the May 19th at 4 p.m.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for a special study session on May 19th, 4 p.m. pertaining to the recruitment brochure for city manager position. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0.
I want to mention Thursday, May 15th, 8 o'clock, Police Memorial at Jerry Appy Park. Everyone's invited.
Thanks for mentioning that.
It is 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, 8 o'clock, okay.
If it rains out, it's at the church across the street. I don't have the name of that church on the top of my mind. But.
All right. Anything else? We will move on to...
One suggestion. It's going to sound like a lighthearted comment, but it isn't. Could we make sure that the speaker system works this time? It was really kind of hard to hear
That's a good point,
year.
because every time I spoke last year at events, that was the one complaint I got. We couldn't hear you. Right. And I talked to a fellow about it recently, and I think it is worth contracting professional sound to some point. It's not going to be a lot of money, but Mean Dean Clinda, that's his name. He does a really good job with sound.
And he'll bring music. Huh? All right.
He does it all. But if he puts it on, you'll hear it.
All right. Well, with that, we'll move on to the Citizens Forum. Please keep your comments within the 3-minute guideline. Thank you.
Well, at this point in time, good evening, Commissioners. Doug Ramp, 1216 Bentgrass Drive, and to make the best use of my time, I'm going to refer to my notes quite a bit. Most of you know I'm a mostly retired business person who has owned and continues to own commercial and residential property within the community. My properties over the years have contributed north of $3 million to our property tax collections. I've had past dealings with most of you on the commission, and I found you all to be receptive and reasonable people. City staff, sometimes yes, sometimes no. As a citizen and homeowner who believes our property taxes are too high, I resent the way our dollars are being used fighting the cozy inn on the signage ordinance. It just seems like this issue should have been put to rest a long, long time ago. I know you've heard that many times, and I know the clock is running. In my humble opinion, none of you would spend your own money the way the city has spent our money fighting this issue. I've always been a believer in the saying, where there's a will, there's a way. Find the way to work through it. But to spend the money that we're spending on legal fees, to me, just seems crazy. It seems like this should have been handled as quickly as it came up, or there should have been a way to, hey, let's figure this out. Let's find a way to work through this. But instead, we have both sides dug in, and it just seems like nobody's winning except the out-of-state attorneys that are involved. I would, listening to Todd earlier, thinking about my past decades here in business, I'm glad to be mostly retired. And again, with the clock running, I've thought about running for a city commission too. But after spending the last 2.5 hours here, I got to rescind that. And after spending 5 to 10 winters away and spending the last 2 right here, I have no desire to spend winters here. As a matter of fact, my wife and I recently have bought a property, comparable value property to what we have here in Salina in Scottsdale, Arizona. And ironically, the property tax is about 1/5 of what we have here locally. I mean, I can't believe how inexpensive it is. You can say they don't have to push snow, but we have residents here that would question whether or not we push snow in our community too, based upon results from previous snowfalls. Anyway, the line in the sand has been drawn. It seems like either side is not willing to budge. It seems like we're in a bad spot. Got to be a way to work through it, but to keep throwing money down the drain, to me, seems like a huge waste of money. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I would ask you, Mr. Remp, to go state this to over on 7th Street.
You're talking to Steve Howard?
And legal's going to interject here, but
Well, you're talking business person involved.
I'm going to say this, because I find this situation obviously very frustrating in the sense of I am no stranger to making decisions that people are not happy with. My former law enforcement experience as a property manager and now as a city commissioner. Where I find myself really frustrated is all those other situations I'm able to articulate to the other party what I'm thinking and the rationale and the logic that is being used. And every member of this commission is basically in a situation where, because of pending litigation, we're kind of frozen here. We can't really communicate, and there's not really going to be an exchange here. I'm just explaining to you that we can't say anything.
Well, I just want to reiterate, it's kind of my point, it never should have got to this, where reasonable people should have put their heads together, and how do we figure this out?
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Norm?
Norman Mann with Salina, Kansas. Taxes are a necessary evil.
Understand.
We don't pay taxes, we don't get services. Back to Administration 5.3. If you want to locate underground items, there's ground penetrating radar, and it will find it. But you're going to have to buy it, the city. But you're going to have to lay out a bunch of money for it because it works.
Thank you.
Rosemary My Salina. I just want to invite the mayor and the commissioners.
Your mic.
Mayor and the commissioners and the citizens of Saline County to the Granny Brigade meeting in May the 20th, which is a week from tomorrow, at 7 o'clock at the Carver Center on 315 North 2nd Street. And our guest speakers will be our House representatives, Clark Sanders, Stephen Howe, Scott Hill, Pat Proctor, and Senator Karen Tyson. And they will be given an update of this past legislature year, and Karen Tyson will be talking about taxes. So you're all more than welcome to come, because it is open to the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben Winhole, Salina. Let's go back to the River Renewal project. I just wanted to be public knowledge to know just what's going on. They stood up here tonight, the ones involved, and said that the RAISE grant, which is on one of your sheets, has everything listed on it, was phase 1 of this project. Okay, the first thing is they're showing all of the trails and the maintenance facility, canoe launches, everything else. How can you do phase 1 when you haven't even dredged the river? Because they're going to need a lot of area to dredge the river. Now, I know the river being dredged is under the Corps of Engineers money, $13 million. But they had already said once that $13 million runs out, they're done. So however how far they can go with that. What also isn't in here, in the 68, now it's up to 68 million as far as the bottom dollar. It was at 35, now it's at 68, is there's no mention of the 500 foot by 40 foot wide by 11 foot deep sediment basin, nor the gates that need to be put in, the swinging gates, or the 35 neutralizing stations that need to be put in to keep it as a Clean Water Act for all of the neighborhoods that will have anything that's draining into the river. I don't have a cost for any of these things, but I guarantee you that if it's not in the 68 million, these items alone, then where are we going to be? Where I had possibly envisioned, have said many times, that we're heading to 100 million before this is over with, money that we don't have. And then, again, I asked the same question, the very same question that I asked first time when I first got up here years ago. Once this 68 million is spent, who's going to take care of it? Who's going to take care of it? They got a maintenance facility that's built. Who's going to maintain the river? 14 miles of linear river or bank that will need to be taken care of. Trails, the lights, everything else, the bridges, all that stuff. Who's going to take care of it?
Good evening. John Blanchard. And Doug threw me off again. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I'm just going to spend part of my time on the Cozy Inn. It's real easy to kind of sit up there and say, oh, we can't talk about it, blah, blah, blah. I haven't seen any public record to say, yeah, public, we can't talk about it. So there hasn't been a public proclamation or anything, but each of you kind of take that to say we can't talk about it. So I have just about every document that has been filed with the court with this. I don't know how many of you have read any of the court documents. There is a substantial amount. I subscribe to the Public Access to Court Electronic Records website, and I've probably spent about $80 on documents for that. One of the things that you can maybe tell people publicly is how much money the legal fees have been currently, and also the fact that a civil rights lawsuit, the prevailing party can request legal fees. And since this is, it typically isn't given to the governmental entity, it's typically given to the plaintiff in those cases. So anyway, so if anybody in the public, since you guys won't give them any information, I mean, I've got the depositions from all of you, from Lauren Driscoll, from Mike Scragg, from Brad Anderson. One thing people that I've showed to are trying to figure out is a lot of people, and I'm not encouraging it, but Commissioner Hoppick, a lot of people are pointing the finger at you, the one that snitched on him and started this whole ball rolling into the thing. If you want to say you weren't the one that snitched on him, then I think people might know a little bit more than they know now. So, and I'm taking it you don't want to say you had nothing to do with it, or?
I have no problem saying
okay.
I did not bring it to anyone's attention.
I appreciate that, because that's what I've been telling them. The other thing I wanted to bring up, kind of in the same vein, so if anybody wants any of these records, I've already paid for them. I'll email them to you. Email me at amazingxmayor@gmail.com and watch the Amazing X Mayor show on Facebook. I want to thank Interim City Manager Jacob Wood. I made a request for open records. I haven't been able to read through it. It's 110 pages, cost me $128, but I do appreciate you turning that around to me and getting back to me with the emails quickly. Also, City Clerk, for her promptness, always sends it out, so I want to give her a big shout out. I'm out of time, so I won't bring up what I had originally got up here to bring up, but I guess that's what the internet and the end of these meetings next time is for. Thank you.
All right. Looks like we're out of members of the public to comment, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Adjourned.